All right. Yeah, that's how we start a boot camp here. Thank you guys so much. One more time. What's that?
With the gumbo band. With the gumbo band.
All right, give it up for the gumbo band. Thank you guys so much. And thank you all for being here. Really excited to be with you today. My name's Darian Rodriguez-Heyman. I'll be your MC and facilitator for the day. And it's really wonderful to see this community coming together. Let me ask, before we get started, how many of you were at one of the boot camps back in the day, 2004, 2010? All right. So this program is really modeled after something that we did for several years when I was the executive director at Craigslist Foundation, called Nonprofit Bootcamp. Started in the Metreon with Kevin and grew to be the largest nonprofit gathering in Bay Area history after only 1 year. And the thing that it was all about when we started this was it was about tactical, practical tips and tools. And when I first started my role at Craigslist Foundation, I did a lot of listening. I think a lot of times when we're working to serve the community, all too often we dive in without taking the time to find out what people need first. And one of the things I found over and over and over again, as I spoke with nonprofit leaders, as I spoke with people who were thinking of starting nonprofits, and as I spoke with some of the groups and the leaders who their life's work is supporting people just like you, what I discovered is there's a lot of fragmentation, there's a lot of duplication of efforts. There's a lot of people that aren't taking the time to first and foremost seek out collaborators and see how they can support existing efforts. And they also weren't aware of some of these incredible resources that are here in the Bay Area and nationally that exist solely to support nonprofits and social change makers. And so the idea of bringing those leaders, those organizations, and those people together because the rope is truly stronger than the thread, that was the foundation of boot camp, and that's what it was all about. And it wasn't about the highfalutin, abstract concepts and theories. It was tactical, practical tips and tools. Do this, don't do that, right? Really, really clear direction for people looking to change the world, and that's what boot camp's all about. So before we get started, let me just get a sense of the audience today. So first of all, raise your hand if you are already associated with an existing nonprofit. All right, most of y'all. What about, is there anybody here that doesn't have an organization but is thinking of starting a nonprofit? All right, we got a few hands. Really quickly, before I go any further, let me just say one quick thing to those of you that just raised your hand. Because I encounter a lot of people that are thinking about starting nonprofits, and that's wonderful that you want to serve the community, that you're passionate, that you're committed. And like I said, one of the things that we as a sector, as a movement with a capital M, don't do well enough is seek first to collaborate and only then to lead. And so the one piece of advice I want to give to you is before you start a new organization, take the time to go out there, try to find other groups who are doing similar work and talk to them and see if there's an opportunity to collaborate, see if there's an opportunity to support their work. And even if you decide to go out on it on your own, at least you're aware of the landscape. At least you're aware of who else is out there and how you're different and the gap that you're filling. Really, really helpful. And if you are committed to moving forward and starting a new organization, I really encourage you to look up the concept of fiscal sponsorship. And the point there is you don't need to set up a new 501c3 and go through the cost and the administration of not only setting it up but maintaining it. You can come under the umbrella of an existing nonprofit, some of whom exists specifically to provide this fiscal sponsorship to start up efforts, and they will take care of a lot of the paperwork, a lot of the filings, etc., and let you focus on really the two things that you should be doing in the early days, which are programs and fundraising. Those are the things that you can't outsource. But filling out the IRS paperwork, dealing with the bookkeeping and accounting and some of the regulations around board meetings and minutes, etc., they can take a lot of that off your plate and allow you to stay focused on the cause. Really important to keep in mind. So for those folks who raised their hand and said they're already associated with a nonprofit, first of all, how many of your nonprofits are based here in Bayview Hunters Point? All right. Can we, first of all, have a round of applause for the local nonprofit leaders working in this community every day? Thank you so much for your leadership. And I'm curious, how big are the organizations? How many of you have under 5 staff? All right, how many of you have more than 5? All right, so we've got a good cross-section of organizations. What we've done today is we've put together a series of incredible speakers, of opportunities for you to get into dialogue with one another and really co-create solutions. And as I shared, the instruction that we've given each and every one of these speakers is to cut through the big theories and the abstract concepts and get into the tactical, practical tips and tools. That's really why we're here. So just a couple words about me as your MC today. My work in the world, broadly speaking, for the past 25 years or so, since I met Kevin, is helping people help. No problem. So yeah, I guess that's a reminder to turn your cell phones off if you haven't already. But yeah, so my work in the world is helping people help. What I do across about 15 active projects at any given point is that I work with nonprofit leaders like yourselves, with philanthropists, with impact investors, with CEOs of mission-led businesses, people who want to make the world a better place, and I help connect them to best practices, helpful resources, and the contacts they need to maximize that impact. I do that in a couple different ways. I really got my start in the nonprofit world as the executive director of Craigslist Foundation, where I started the Nonprofit Bootcamp back in 2004 with Kevin on video and producing a bunch of content for us. More recently, I've done a lot of work around different aspects of diversity and inclusion, a lot of work around gender justice. I started something called Gender Smart, a global summit in the finance and investment community that brings people from 50 countries together in London every 18 months, was on the board of Planned Parenthood. I used to run Blue Avocado for my friends at the Nonprofit Insurance Alliance Group, who are the sponsors today and who helped make this event possible. So quickly, can we please give a round of applause to our sponsor, and thanks so much to NIAC for their continued support and leadership in the space. So that's a free online magazine you can subscribe to, lots of tactical, practical tips. At this point, I am a part-time executive director for NUMI Foundation, those of you that might be tea drinkers. We have a small corporate foundation. Started the first conference series focused on social media for social good. And the other major project that I've been doing lately is I've become a grant maker. I've been working with a high net worth family here in California around advancing racial equity in Dayton, Ohio. And so really looking to lift up the black community in Dayton around early childhood education, around workforce development and housing access, and around food security. And that has been really interesting to translate my work, mostly on the fundraising and nonprofit leadership side, into the philanthropy side, something that you'll hear from Latifah Simon in just a little bit, who's had a similar journey. I've also written a couple best-selling nonprofit books, all of which you're able to get for free today. So if you didn't already get a copy of one or both of the books, feel free, and especially given the focus on Black-led and Black-serving organizations today, I want to point out that the newest book, which is the second edition of Nonprofit Management 101, my dear friend and collaborator Van Jones wrote the introduction to the new book, and it's incredible, and I think it's really spot on. There's a lot of great messages in there about partnering with unlikely allies, about being bold and being brave. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover a variety of things. So we'll share some initial comments. As I mentioned, Latifah Simon, I'm really excited to have her join us as the morning keynote. She'll be up here in a little bit after we do the morning welcomes. Then many of you might know Kimberly Bryant from Black Girls Code, now Ascend Ventures. We're going to do a little fireside chat, and she'll be up here after Latifah. Then I'm going to give a short presentation on looking at how to activate your board. What are the concrete tips and tools for getting your boards more involved in fundraising and for actually leveraging them as a force to propel your work forward instead of just a group of people you give updates to. Over lunch, we're going to be providing lunch today. You'll have an opportunity to get into conversations with one another. So we're going to break into executive roundtables, basically small circles, where everyone in the room today, everyone here that's participating in the boot camp, will have an opportunity to introduce yourself and your work to the group, but also to ask for support, right? We're here because we're all trying to build a better world, and when we do it together, greater things become possible. And so we're going to create a space specifically for that. Unfortunately, Theo Ellington had a COVID exposure yesterday, and so he's not going to be able to speak today. We're going to figure out a useful way to fill that space. We've got a couple thoughts, and so I'll keep you posted as the day goes on. But that's really the agenda for today. We are going to have some brief closing comments before we wrap up at 2 o'clock today. And we do want to be respectful of people's schedules, so we will be giving you some of your afternoon, hopefully to implement some of the tips and the tools that you learned today. So before we do anything else, I want to take a step back and ask a question that, frankly, I don't think we ask ourselves often enough as nonprofit leaders. And it is a question that I try to think about every time I'm in a group meeting, every time I am, launching a new program or a new organization. And the question is, what does success look like? What does success look like? And I think it's critical that before we dive in and start trying to make the world a better place, that we have a clear sense of where we're heading, right? What does success look like? Where are we going? What are we trying to create? And so, in order to answer that question before we get started today, I want to say that if you leave today, come 2 o'clock, and you take off, and you're inspired, then that's great, but it actually means we haven't done our job. Because what success looks like today is not only leaving you inspired, but leaving you inspired to action, right? What are the things that you can do differently this afternoon, tomorrow, and moving forward that put you in a better position to serve your community? That's why we're here. It's not just to inspire, but to inspire to action. And when you think about essentially what you should be looking for over the next several hours, I want to give you a brief framework of 3 things, all rooted in the sort of California gold rush history, 3 things that you should be on the lookout for in each and every session today. And those are maps, picks and shovels, and nuggets. And what I mean by that is maps are the conceptual frameworks that help you go about achieving your goal. What does success look like? Well, if you're trying to dig for gold and you're looking in San Francisco or Silicon Valley, you're probably not going to have much luck. We want to go to gold country for that. So know where you're heading and know how to get there. The picks and shovels, this is really our focus today. These are the tools. These are the concrete, tactical, practical things that you are using once you get to that goal to go about your work, the templates, the tools, the websites, the conferences, the books, the things that you can use on an ongoing basis to work smarter when you're working harder. And finally, the nuggets. These are sort of the kernels of wisdom, the distilled essence of taking a big, complicated concept and boiling it down to its essence. What do I need to remember about how to engage my board? What do I need to remember and keep in the back of my mind, that little one-liner nugget about fundraising more effectively, right? And you will find many nuggets today. This entire program has been really designed around those. And I want to start with one nugget that for me is probably one of the most important insights that I can start us off with today, that I can share, especially as it relates to one of my life's passions and part of my life's work, which is fundraising. And let me first ask, how many of you feel less than perfectly comfortable when it comes to fundraising for your cause? How many of you have a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of fear, a little bit of discomfort, right? That's really common. But I also want to share that discomfort, that fear, that shame that many of us feel when it comes to fundraising is actually rooted in what I believe to be the single greatest challenge, the single greatest obstacle that we as a global movement with a capital M, that we face as it relates to fundraising. And that is this notion that sometimes, and for some of us all the time, when we are raising money for our cause, we have this sort of tin cup approach to fundraising. We feel like we're begging for alms, right? And the good news and the sort of nugget of it all is that is based on a failure of perception. And there's a pretty simple way to think about it in a completely different way that has helped transform the fundraising efforts of thousands of nonprofits around the country, as I've spoken. And it is best illustrated in a short story about a young man who would go on to become a celebrity, renowned philanthropist. But when he was younger, he was the first in his family to go to college. And not only did he get his undergrad, he actually went on to get a master's degree. And one day, he was in a philosophy class in a big auditorium, kind of like this, with hundreds of students, all master's and doctorate students in this philosophy class. And the philosophy professor gets in front of the room, and he holds up a glass of water like this one, and he says, "Class, is this glass half full or half empty?" And, not a new concept, something we've all heard before, but when you've got a bunch of master's and doctorate students sitting around for an hour and a half, they can talk in circles about almost anything, especially in a philosophy class, and that's what they did. So they talked in circles and circles, and no surprise, they did not solve the age-old riddle. And so this young man was incredibly frustrated. He and his family had made a huge amount of sacrifices to put him through not only undergrad, but now a graduate program. And here he was surrounded by hundreds of high-paying master's and doctorate students sitting around for almost 2 hours talking in circles about whether the glass were half full or half empty. And so he walks home kind of despondent, frustrated, and he gets home, and his grandmother, Gertrude, is there waiting for him. And she says what grandmas kind of always say when you get home from school: "How was class today?" "I don't want to talk about it." He's frustrated. But she presses him, as grandmothers are prone to do. "No, really, I want to know, how was class today?" And he says, "Well, if you really got to know, it was incredibly frustrating. We had hundreds of master's and doctorate students in this philosophy class sitting around for almost 2 hours, and all we did was debate if the glass were half full or half empty." And his grandmother Gertrude, with a second-grade education, mind you, without missing a beat, says, "Oh, well, that's easy. It depends on whether you're pouring or drinking." Pouring or drinking, right? And the point is, it's all about perspective. And when we fundraise and when we think of ourselves as people that need to beg, people that take this tin cup approach, what we are doing, that failure of perception that I talked about earlier, is we are mistakenly thinking of ourselves as the drinkers. And the truth and the nugget that I want you all to remember as you go out there and as you raise money for your cause, because you need to hold your head high when you do that. It feels better for you, it feels better for the donor, and you raise a lot more money when you come from a place of power, when you come from a place of abundance. And that place is rooted in the fundamental understanding that we are not the drinkers. We are the pourers. We are the nurturers of society. And whether you're focused on arts and culture, or the environment and environmental justice, or education, or housing, whatever that cause is that you care about so deeply, remember that you are one of the pourers. You are one of the nurturers of society. And what we as a global movement with a capital M fundamentally do as nonprofits is that we connect people and organizations with resources to the change that they want to see in the world. And for the most part, that is change they could not make on their own. So they should be thanking us. And instead of saying thank you when they give a gift, you should say, "You're welcome." You should say, "Congratulations." And you should hold your head high, because this is a privilege. This is holy work to fundraise for a cause you believe in. And you should feel proud to say, "Now's the time when I'm excited to invite you to join me in supporting this critical work." Right? And it's not an ask, it's an invitation, just like inviting someone to your party. They might not make it, but you're inviting them anyway. And when you take the time to really get to know someone, and whether they're a foundation, whether they're a donor, and you get to really understand what their goals are for building a better world, if you can help them understand how your work addresses that, then they will gladly support it. And that's the act from one of my sheroes, one of my mentors, Kay Sprinkle Grace, is that people don't give to you, they give through you. We are a channel. We are a conduit for social change. And so when you have that shame, when you have that fear and those feelings creep up, remember, you're not raising money for yourself. You're not even raising money for your organization. You're raising money for those kids that you serve, for those unhoused people, for those schools, those teachers, whatever it might be. That's what you're raising money for. And if people are compelled, and if they want to support that vision, they will do so gladly. And if not, that needs to be okay too. So at this point, I'm really excited to bring up a couple special guests as we get ready to kick things off. First of all, raise your hand if you know Kevin Epps. All right, I thought that might be the case. Like I said, I've known Kevin for over 20 years. He's become a dear friend and collaborator. We've worked together on many fronts. And this is a man who I've seen reinvent himself in so many ways, but always, always, always with the community in mind, starting with this community here in Bayview Hunters Point. And so I'm excited to bring up my friend, my collaborator, Kevin Epps.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, community. Love y'all, man. I love y'all like a fat kid love cake. That what 50 Cent? I just want to say thank you, Darian, for coming and collaborating with us on this important project. As the chair of the SF Bayview National Black Newspaper Foundation, which was recently formed, this was one of the first initiatives that I took to convene this type of conversation. Oftentimes our community, a lot of the social, economic, environmental issues that we're dealing with, I think we can solve those issues. We can solve those problems. So we are who we've been waiting for. You know, nobody's coming to save us. So with that understanding in mind, from the work that I've been doing over the years, and me and Darian worked together, and I was at the first Nonprofit Bootcamp, and I was really impressed by the convening and conversation and exchange of dialogue and discussion, and then the action. And there wasn't a lot of folks that looked like us there. But the context and what that stood for, it didn't matter. It needed to be brought here into our community because I saw the impact that it had on communities. And so here we are, fast forward. I've had the opportunity to have this chance to bring this convening, this dialogue and discussion about community, about Black-led serving organizations. And I think this information and this knowledge will serve us well going forward. And this won't be a one-off thing because I work with them, and so I was able to see the growth and the evolution of not just this being a one-off, but us reconvening with a group of philanthropic organizations and people that are making these decisions about this diversity and equity and inclusion, and that's lip sync. So we're going to hold them accountable because it costs, because they're using us to be very, how would I say that? Back up, when the George Floyd thing happened, all these corporations and everybody, we pledging billions of dollars to the Black community. But between them pledging and those resources getting to the community, there's a disconnect. And that's the part that I think we play as an important catalyst and connector to be able to tap those resources and serve the communities that we know how to serve. We're best equipped to serve the community and the issues that we have. We know the problems, we know the solutions. So we're best equipped to serve our community. Is that Latifah Simon? Scared me, sorry. So that's why I was inspired to bring this convening and this event together along with partners and everybody else. And so with that being said, I'm going to move forward and bring up an extraordinary leader, a visionary, a brother who I've known since he was back in Atlanta going to school. And right now he's our president. He's the president of the San Francisco Board of Directors. He's a boots on the ground type dude. You know, you see him manning the mallet, and then you see him with the Jordans on the block. You know what I'm saying? And everything in between. And that's important. That's important to us. And it means a lot. And so I just got so much, I love this dude it's like my little brother, you know, and to see, you know, the work that he's been doing is his commitment and his resilience, because I know the story, I'm just even more uplifted and inspired that we have such a leader in our community, and that's amongst us. So I want to bring up the president, Shaman Walton, to share some words with us. Let's give this brother a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, good brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Kev. Good morning, everybody. I know it's, when the lights go down, it seems a little bit less exciting when you're in a room, and I'll try to bring some more energy here this morning. Just real quick, yes, I'm the president of the Board of Supervisors, and some people may wonder, well, what is he doing here having a conversation at a nonprofit seminar? And I did have a former life before serving on the Board of Supervisors, and I was the executive director of Young Community Developers for about 8.5 years. And prior to that, worked for the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and prior to that, was the director of the Potrero Hill Family Resource Center. And when I got to YCD, we had 9 staff and about a $750,000 budget spread out over 2 years. And by blessings of God, by working in community, working with community, by the time I left 8.5 years later, we had grown from over 70 staff into a $13 million budget because of the resiliency of community, because of the hard work and dedication. So I just wanted to share a few nuggets about nonprofit success. Thank you. I just want to share a few nuggets about nonprofit success. And one thing, let me tell you, what I'm not here to do is tell you how to start a nonprofit. That's not my skill set. That's not something I've ever done. People reach out to me about starting nonprofits. I don't have that information. That's not something I've ever done, nor wanted to do. But what I will say is, regardless of you starting your own nonprofit, regardless of if you're working for another nonprofit that you're trying to elevate and take further, the first thing you have to always understand is to keep to the mission. The mission of a nonprofit entity is the most important piece. You have to keep to that mission. A lot of times, folks have a great mission, they do great work, and then they start to chase resources that are outside of that mission. And what happens when you chase resources outside of the mission, you start to lose your purpose of why you're part of an organization and why you're here to do the work. And a lot of people fall victim of that because there's so many resources available in so many different areas. So what happens is you have a good organization, you're getting some good work done, you have a great staff member, and let's say the staff member's name is Steven. Steven's doing a great job at what he does. You start going after $30,000 grant here, $20,000 grant here, $5,000 grant here. Now you just gave Steven 5 jobs. Because $5,000 ain't paying no salary, $20,000 ain't paying no salary, $30,000 ain't paying no salary. So you went outside of your mission, now you gave Steven 5 jobs. So guess what? Steven gonna fail, right? Steven can't do 5 jobs. He's human, he may be a great person, but now you gave him 5 jobs to do, which means he had to go away from the core of the mission of the work that you're doing. So always stick to the mission. Go after resources that are focused on the mission and the purpose, and make sure when you go after resources that you are going after resources that are going to fund positions and truly be able to fund the work that you're attempting to do. Another thing I would say is you have to be strong fiscally, programmatically, and administratively. And I would say that programs have to be strong. You have to be focused on outcomes. That's what funders are looking for. They want to make sure that the resources they give you, the work is actually getting done, and you're actually providing the community the support and the work that you say you're going to do. Secondly, administratively, to really be able to do a quality job, you're going to have all the back house stuff in order. Strong fiscal department, strong data systems in place. You're going to have the right support for the people to do the work, or as stated earlier, work under another nonprofit as a fiscal agent, because those back house functions are really what determine whether you're going to be successful or whether you're going to fail as a nonprofit. And when I say fiscally strong, the fiscal management part of organizations is everything, particularly here in San Francisco. If you manage money right, if you utilize resources appropriately, if you account for every dollar in the right manner, you're going to be successful. You can fix programs, You know, you can work on administrative functions, but if you mess up the money, then you're not going to get any more. It's really that simple. And so that fiscal house is very important as we do this work. So, you know, just really want you to remember those things in the nonprofit world and nonprofit leadership. And you also need to know your own leadership style. People lead different. People receive information different, but knowing your leadership style is very important. You have to know what makes you tick, what you're about, and what makes you that leader. You know, for me, it's really emotional intelligence. I lead with empathy, social skills, motivation, self-awareness, self-regulation. Those are the things that I understand that work for me in leadership. And everyone needs to know what works for you as a leader. And just the last thing I'll say about nonprofit leadership and success is really, you should always be mentored by somebody. There should be someone, a collaborative group, people that you're working with or someone that you're working with that is giving you the right information as a leader, that is demonstrating how you're going to be successful. You got to have those professional networking groups, those spaces where you can talk to people about what they're doing to be successful, how they're in the place that they are, and really have that sharing. But also be in a space where you're listening and learning from somebody, because we all should be getting mentored by someone, and we all should be mentoring someone. So, you know, those are just a few nuggets I wanted to share with the time this morning, but it's really great to see everyone. It's really great to see so many people focus on doing the work in community. Don't get frustrated when you get no's, whether it's with funding, support, because you're going to get a lot more no's. Really, if you're doing the work, going after resources, there's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot of no's. But also going to be big wins as you continue to stay focused on the mission. I always tell people, it's always about the work. It's always about the work. If you do the work, you will get noticed. You will receive support. May not happen in year 1, may not happen in year 2, may not happen in year 3. But if you are doing the work, you will get noticed, because what happens is you stand out in the crowd, because the people not doing the work, they also get noticed, and they get noticed very quickly. So just stay to the mission, stay to the core, and you'll have success in whatever nonprofit role that you play. Thank you for having me this morning. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you, Brother Shaman, President. I call him the President. I like that. Remind me of Obama, so I say the Pres. I call it, actually, he'll tell you when I text, I say Mr. President. I don't know, it's something about a brother being the president. I don't know. I love you, brother. This space right here means so much to me and to the community. It's like the heartbeat in the soul of this community. I was young when I used to play the drums up here with Aunt B from the Hunters Point Youth Park. We used to come down here and do African dance. When they used to say, hey, yeah, you know, all the sisters, we was little, you know what I mean? So this like moves me, it's spiritual. I'm so thankful for this space, and the collaboration could not have happened without the support of this foundation. The Bayview Opera House, Ruth Williams Memorial Theater. It's a historical space. It means so much to us. And that partnership is just, it's like breathing new life into like what's going on. If you notice the activities and the synergy in the community, it's because of this space right here has been activated. And so I want to bring up Ashley Smiley, who's a partner in this endeavor to help bring this happen. And she's the program manager for the Bayview Opera House. And we'll share some words and keep this thing going. But yeah, this is going to be an incredible day, man. We got a few other speakers coming up. And Ashley Smiley. Thank you, sister.
Hey, good morning. So yeah, I'm Smiley. I'm the program manager for the Bayview Opera House, Ruth Williams Memorial Theater, and I just want to say it's really beautiful to see y'all in here. I got like emotional about it because one of the things that I've been doing the last 3 years is really having conversations with the community about how they felt about previous situations, what they wanted to see here, what they needed. And we've been going through some leadership changes, right? Some things have gotten adjusted, but one of my main goals was making sure that stuff like this was available, right? Not only, entertainment and classes, but like the Bayview has so many entrepreneurs, nonprofits, people working for the betterment of this community. And again, we don't need those resources being, kept behind gates and up in towers and inaccessible to the people who are really on the ground doing the work. So when Kevin let me know, like, hey, I want to do this nonprofit boot camp, I was like, yes. And he was like, and then I was like, and sure, absolutely, we're just gonna do it. We're gonna make sure that it happens. We're gonna make sure that people have access to each other. The different organizations that are in this room do so much amazing work, but how often do you get to be in the same room? Be able to break bread together, be able to see each other, talk to each other, network. But also we have folks like Darian, and we have folks like Kimberly Bryan of Black Girls Code, and Latifah Simon, who's the BART director. How often do you get to be in the room with them folks? Have them know your name, have them be able to network with you, and then get some game from them, you know what I mean? Like Theo Ellington's gonna be in here. And then y'all got a whole textbook. Legitimate resource, a legitimate book for reference, something that you can actually have that's tangible, that you can keep coming back to, share with your other community members, not only on managing your nonprofit, but on fundraising, because it be broke out here. A lot of people don't understand how much it takes to be able to pull stuff off, right? And that's not just the funds, but that's your emotional labor. That's your spiritual endeavors. That's having weird community phone calls in the middle of the night, people calling you on Sunday evening because they got something. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot. It's a lot, but you do this work because it's personal. You do this work because you love it. And so one of the things is that I really wanted to make sure that people understood that that's the direction that the Opera House is going in. Whatever you knew about the past, if it was pre-Smiley, it doesn't matter. It's a whole new ball game out here, and now that I have your emails, please understand, I will be contacting you, I will be hounding you down, I will be letting you know about what we have to offer, because aside from having, line dancing and turf classes, and who's out here teaching strutting? We are. We also have our Tools of the Trade program, which teaches people how to do production. A lot of folks think that the only thing you can do when you're in a theater space or on a film set is be on camera. Sorry, no, that's beautiful, and we teach you how to do that too. But the people holding the camera, behind the camera, putting down the tape, holding the boom mics, all that production information, we're teaching you that too, so that you can go out there and make that money, because people be making $50 an hour, they don't even know they can. You know what I mean? You know how to plug the right things in, you know how to be the plug. Understand? But also our Artist in Residence program, which means we're gonna be dedicating funds, space, time to cultivating artists from this community so that they can be on this stage, so that they can know what it's like to produce something in a professional venue and have that. So, when you're here, while you're talking with folks, also understand that I'm Smiley, I'm accessible. I may not want to answer the phone, I'll be honest, but I'll answer your email. But what do you want to bring here? What can you bring here? What can you see happening here? Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what we can do as a collective, because that's what's really important. I could go into a whole spiel about how this building's been here since 1888, and then it had renovations, and then blah, 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 but what we're talking about is our future. What we're doing in this room right now is setting the grounds for everybody's organization and individual future. So let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Grab you some coffee. You're going to have gumbo social coming in with some lunch, and we're going to break bread and talk about it. So please, take all the notes, absorb all the information, and I appreciate seeing you here.
All right. So, first of all, can we give some gratitude to our hosts, to the President of the Board of Supervisors for kicking us off, and to Kevin Epps for his leadership in the community. I also want us to recognize our sponsor. They were really the first and only organization I called when Kevin asked me to work with him on this boot camp, and that's because I've been working with the Nonprofit Insurance Alliance for over 20 years now. They were one of the first sponsors of the Nonprofit Bootcamp during the Craigslist days. They've worked with me on my books. As I mentioned, I work with them around Blue Avocado. And for those of you that don't know, they are a nonprofit that specializes in providing insurance to nonprofits. And so I'm really excited to introduce Julie, let her share a couple quick words as we get ready to kick off.
Thank you, Darian. Good morning, everyone. It is really exciting to be here today. It's been almost 20 years since the original boot camp, and I always took for granted that something like that was going to exist, but I think we've especially seen since the pandemic that can easily go away. So it's great to be part of something like this today where we can share information and get information. I'm here all day. I'm really hoping that you come over and talk to me about your insurance needs. Like Darian said, Nonprofits Insurance, we're a 501c3 nonprofit ourselves. We were actually created for the sector to provide nonprofits with an alternative in the marketplace. So we don't operate like a typical insurer, and money is not our only motivation. As their external relationships director, I have the privilege of speaking to nonprofits all day. So I can help nonprofits understand the process of getting coverage, what they need, and what they need to do to move forward. So just keep in mind, you know, your organizations are out there serving the community, doing real good in our world. All we do is focus on insurance. So we don't expect you to be experts. That's what we're here for, to help you understand what you need to know so that you can continue your missions. So like I mentioned, I'm here all day. Please stop by. I'd love to talk to you and find out more about what your organization does. Thank you.
All right, one more time for Nonprofit Insurance Alliance for making today possible. Thank you again. And as she mentioned, they do have a table in the back of the room. And so I encourage you to take some time, learn about them. I've also worked with them as a client, and I can attest to the work that they do. So before we dive in, I'd like to give you all a chance to get to know each other a little bit better. And so can everybody stand up, please? All right. And I'd like you to try to find someone that you don't already know and briefly just introduce yourself, your work, and share why you're here. did a bunch of work with the National Police Accountability Project. Yeah. No, you're good. I want to see you shine so you can take some time. All right, everyone. We're going to ask everyone to take their seats so we can get started. All right, everyone, if you could please take your seats. All right. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. All right, everyone. We do need to get moving with the schedule. I know there's going to be plenty of opportunities for networking and talking to your peers, but if I could please ask everybody to have your seat. I want to kick us off with our morning keynote. So as you can see, there's a lot of incredible people in the room today. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to get into dialogue, but we do have limited time for our program, so I want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's schedule. So most of the hands went up when I asked if you knew who Kevin Epps was. How about Latifah Simon? Yeah? All right. So my wife and I have sort of an ongoing argument about who's better friends with her, because she was on her board. I worked with her about 20 years ago, at the time what was called the Center for Young Women's Development, organizing a fundraiser for them. And since that time, those of you that know Latifah have seen her star rise, going from being an executive director to now a funder at Aconati and Meadow Fund, but also a board member at BART, inspired by what happened with Oscar Grant, as well as with Cal State University. And this is a woman who, every single time I hear anything about her, it blows me away. Man, there's a lot of things to list, but the most beautiful thing I've seen that was sort of testament to her lifetime of leadership was there was a problem with the BART board recently, and there was some shenanigans pulled, and they basically tried to move her off the board, and the entire community mobilized behind this woman, and that is because of her lifetime of leadership. And I'm really excited to bring up Latifah Simon to share some of her top tips.
It's totally my fault. I'm so late. Let me tell you why, because like many folks who were raised in San Francisco, I'm now in the East Bay. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today because I'm so late. And let me just tell you, I dropped my baby off at 8:10 and was in a lift this whole time. And I was like, don't turn back. I need to see my people. I need to be here. Before I talk a little bit about why I wanted to be here so much today. Oh my God, I think I'm gonna cry.
We love you, Latifah.
So this Kevin was very close to my Kevin, who was also born, in San Francisco like I was, in the Fillmore. He was my husband, and he would have been 53 today. I'm raising his babies, hoping that those black girls can be a part of a civil society that doesn't tolerate them, that celebrates them. The children with dead fathers, the children who we know that we love so much, hear their parents, behind phones from cages. Being raised here in the beautiful and tragedy of San Francisco, beautiful, beauty and tragedy, I found sanctuary. Can you repeat that? Sanctuary. Because it's what we all are doing in the work. I went to George Washington High School, and both of my parents struggled so deeply with crack cocaine. And it's funny because on my phone, I'm hearing the Honorable Elaine Brown. We're trying to, right now with the Attorney General's office, Rob Bonta's office, set up a commission. I don't want to hang up on them because we got business to do after this talk. With Wanda Johnson and Elaine Brown, we're demanding that the Attorney General's office set up a commission so that we can probe road police departments who continue to kill our babies. Those same babies who are on the phone with their fathers at night from prisons and jails, those same babies who go to visit their family members in coma, the life expectancy of black children. You know, there's a lot of pathology. It's 20 years shorter than their white counterparts. In this here city, they will live 20 years, not just from, the statistics say, not just because of violence. We're talking, and you all know, the food that we eat and the air that we breathe and the pain of the transatlantic slave trade that still is so deeply encompassed in our DNA, but we are survivors. So when we talk about this whole opportunity to create and sustain institutions, it is about sanctuary. And you know where I learned so much about this idea of sort of radical liberation of the oppressed was, in fact, when I was a teenager, struggling deeply in understanding that everybody who was sitting right and left to me who looked like me from Hunters Point, from Fillmore, when we were sitting in class, we had to show up with the face as if the war on drugs didn't happen, as if our parents weren't fighting to survive in a mess in employment and opportunities, places that didn't see them and humanize them. I'm not talking about 1955. I am talking about 1993. I'm talking about 2022. In this city, black people we know are not humanized. Anywhere. We're not front of the house in retail. We beg and plead to get union jobs so we can put braces on our kids' teeth and send them to college if we are so blessed. It's not 55, it's 2022. What you all are doing is harboring this idea that not only do we deserve place, we are deeply in the soil. I don't care if you're doing service work, power building. We are meeting our people and saying not only are we human, but we are anointed. I started this work in 1993. I was kicked out of high school and no one ever called to follow up, right? At Wash, I never went to school. I ended up working in fast food and I was boosting clothes. Some of you all know Patty Lee. Patty Lee was my lawyer. She was my public defender and she was one of the first people that weren't my granny or even my mother or my father. They all loved me despite their own pathologies. Patty Lee, unlike my teachers in schools who didn't believe that I was human, she looked at me and she said, "You're really smart. You're brilliant." And it was those same words that made me go back to school. I barely graduated, but I found a job. And I want to talk to you about our work. I found a job that paid me in 1993 double the minimum wage. It was $8.50. It allowed me to stop boosting and literally go back to school because our children are making life and death choices for the smallest bits of human dignity. A place to stay downtown because granny is dead and there's no place for me to go, so I gotta go and get an SRO hotel. I'll make a life and death choice and stand on this corner and sell the same poison that killed my daddy. Our children are two survivors trying to find sanctuary. I was one of those children. Found a job being an outreach worker in the midst of the heroin and AIDS crisis. And those of you all who remember the 90s and the Tenderloin, it was also a similar moment of crisis that we see now, but it was during the mass incarceration rage in the state of California when 3 strikes was uplifted, and we saw the proliferation of our folks going in, and we saw our children figuring out, again, how to survive in the dystopic city that again dehumanized them. There were young women that I went to school with who were not engaging in sex work. They were being trafficked and raped. There were young men from cartels. They were given dope to sell to people who looked like their fathers because, again, they were making life and death choices. And San Francisco was still then one of the richest cities in the United States, and its only only resolution dealing with street children. We humanize street children, right? And Bahia, we don't humanize street children here. We call them child soldiers. In East Africa, we call them demons and thugs here. I remember the 90s, but being given an opportunity to make double the minimum wage as a child with nowhere to go, doing work in community, literally in the Tenderloin, knocking on doors, urging our folks who are involved in the underground street economy, humanize them. It's the underground street economy. We can say hustle, but they are working in the underground street economy, urging them and begging them to join a little organization now that's known as the Young Women's Freedom Center. We were teeny. It was one woman. She got a small grant, our founder, from the Women's Foundation of California. It was $5,000, and she said, I can hire a few girls. I don't know how long this is gonna last, but I know that services downtown in the Tenderloin weren't supporting little black girls. They weren't working with folks trying to build power. They were simply trying to serve them and, again, pathologize them. The Street Survival Project at the time, later the Center for Young Women's Development, later the Young Women's Freedom Center, saved my life. Because it wasn't that I was being served, I was being hired. I was trained in research. I was able to meet face to face with, again, other young people that had been forgotten about and not served by the people in the institutions that were supposed to love them and support them. I became the executive director a couple of years later with a baby on my hip, right out of the Banneker homes. I hadn't finished college, I hadn't started college, but one thing I knew as a 19-year-old girl who then I had a staff of 7, we were getting $5,000 grants, $300 checks. We deserve better. And I don't care who I need to go to. I had a vision as a young executive director that I was going to create a Highlander Center. If you haven't been or haven't heard of it, look it up. It was a training center for young black organizers in the civil rights movement where young people would go despite, again, the monkeys on their backs and the Jim Crow sweat on their foreheads. They would go to the Highlander Center and they would be trained in nonviolent civil disobedience. I knew that in Fillmore and in Hunters Point, we needed jobs. I wanted to create a Highlander Center, which I later created, where young women who were in the criminal justice system and juvenile justice system had sanctuary. I had a baby by a man that didn't love me. She's 26 now, she's at Howard Law School. She's graduating, so she's coming back here. Little Lamina, she's in her 3rd year of law school because of y'all. But with that baby on my hip, I was begging, beautiful Jack was saved my life. I wanna go and I wanna be in juvenile hall and sit with young women and not tell them that they're beautiful. I want to create, again, sanctuary and bring those girls when they come out to my institution and hire them not just as experts, but as healers. If you have survived this thing, if you are still alive, you have more resiliency than anybody unlocking and locking a door. The Young Women's Freedom Center is now a 27-year-old organization. It has a $7 million budget annually, and it's still run by girls from this city in the system. There's no white woman in the corner raising money. And so when we think about all of those years, I left because there was a young woman, she was only 36 at the time, and she had started a task force. I was still running the center at the time. She was running a task force. She had came in from Alameda County. She was working with Louise Rennie. And she said she used to be a prosecutor in Alameda County. I didn't deal with the police. I seen the police throw down my father, and he looked at me. I remember, who remember the Fun Center? I remember San Francisco PD threw down my father. They thought he was somebody else. I was a little girl with huge glasses, with short little pigtails. They threw down my father, and I saw the helplessness in his eyes as his hands were behind his back. And yes, we need law enforcement. We don't need law enforcement that dehumanizes us. But so when this woman, her name was Kamala Harris, came to me and said, none of your girls go back to prison and jail that come to the center. I said, it's easy. We provide childcare. I pay double the minimum wage. They are organizing. We have a dream to shut down juvenile hall. 20 years later, guess what happened? That was the Young Women's Freedom Center and all of you all who have moved that. Because we knew that children, despite the harm that they've both lived through and caused, they didn't deserve to be in a cage. It never has worked. It will never work. She said, your girls don't go back to jail, your members and your staff. Young women who were charged with violent crimes, young women who were habitual dope dealers, young women who were also engaged in trafficking. It was clear. These young women are healers. She asked me when she was working for Louise Rennie to create a task force with her that stopped the arrest and prosecution of young women who were out on the streets being trafficked, girls literally in the mid-90s, under 18, instead of being supported as victims of rape. Our girls who were going downtown to do sex work, they were literally incarcerated. Years later, I received, about 2 years later, after we actually won that fight, it was one of my first fights in San Francisco to change patterns and practices. Again, a young, loudmouth girl with a little baby and a mother still deep in her addiction. Kamala ran for district attorney, and again, I was like, I would never work for you. I would never work for the man. And one of the things she told me was, fine, you can continue staying outside. Someone else, if you've done your job, could take over your job. Hear me out. If you're doing your job well, someone could easily take over your job and come in and create a program that does what systems should do, take care of young people. Whatever your politics about the vice president now, I worked with Rain and Ross. We created the Back on Track program, and I have 500 young men that I met every single morning individually as they came in, were arrested the night before, and we asked them very simple things, like I did the young women at the center where I worked as executive director for 11 years. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? What do you deserve? Let's do a laundry list. And through that laundry list, if you trust me, I will walk you out of this cell today, and in 9 months, we will make all of these things come true. Children do not want to take life or death chances to survive. If systems could do what they were not intended to do, hear me, and support Black and brown children, there could be a path to their own liberation, but systems weren't designed that way. And working in the DA's office, being able to shift just for about 5 years, again, as a young woman who had not yet been to college, so what I understood as perpetual, disgusting policies that would rather deeply penalize children of incarcerated parents, children who are living through the drug war, than love them. Over 80% of the young people that went through what we called a program, again, it was jobs, labor jobs, political education, know what we're doing and why we're here. They never went back into custody. They never went back into custody. Almost 90%, it was 87%. Why? It wasn't systems, it was aunties and uncles like you all. What do you need? I want to wrap up and just briefly talk about 3 lessons that I've learned. And I'll tell you about my job, even though I'm not supposed to talk about it. It's not secret, but my donor likes to be she likes to have a lot of ambiguity, but I love it. I'm running a $1 billion fund. I'm the president of a $1 billion fund. And I got into philanthropy. No. Let me tell you something. I got into philanthropy after years and years of sitting behind tables trying to convince people who either had money or worked for people with money about our humanity. And it was disgusting. And it felt horrible. It felt racist. It was racist. Those interactions were despicable. Philanthropy in itself is a farce. That we, as people who are healers, who create sanctuary, have to, instead of being out here and organizing and loving and holding and creating space, we are spending nights trying to figure out how the sentence looks, how to figure out if I have all my attachments. Can I hear a amen, right? that I can't buy bottled water and I gotta spend money before you reimburse me for doing the work that you as a city and county were supposed to do in the first place. I found fundraising dehumanizing, but again, like all of us, we have faced fears. Our people, when we examine the transatlantic slave trade, they always beat up any people. Where over 100,000 folks just in 6 years had to travel thousands of miles in their own feces. The fact that my hair is still nappy tells me that we are bound for liberation. You understand? That you put the challenge in front of me, and even as someone at that time who had not been in a college class, we knew at the center and later on in other organizations that I ran, you give me a challenge and I swear to you, I'll meet it. Because my dad died in a Tenderloin hotel, never having worked a job that he loved. My whole life, I would always say, I get this opportunity to create space. So you want a problem statement? Baby, I'll give you a statement of liberation. You want a theory of change? I'll give you a theory of freedom. You want a 10-page narrative? I'll work on it every day, and I'll give you a 50-page proclamation for how we see our people through, and I would still only get $25,000. You know what I'm saying? So over the last few years, I made the decision to go into philanthropy because I knew that we deserved someone on the other side of the table who required only that we be human, only that we talk about, again, our visions of freedom, giving resources. I still find it extremely difficult because I'm constantly looking in the eyes of previously incarcerated folks who are trying to build an opportunity, and I see what they have gone through with other funders. I have learned a couple of things. There's nothing that we cannot and should not do, and not just writing the proposals and getting the deadline done, but also challenging corrupt systems, whether they be governmental or private. I want to challenge you, Funder A, for not calling me back. It is my job to call you every day until you call me back. Your job is to give money away. If it's not to me, tell me so. Be courageous, like our young people have to be. Be courageous, like our grandmothers have to be. Call me back. I learned that as a fundraiser because, again, I saw my young people doing everything that they could do to not go back to prison and jail. I'm going to hold that funder accountable the same way systems are trying to hold our babies accountable for things that they didn't do. I'm going to call you every day. I couldn't get a meeting with the president of the Ford Foundation when I was running the Center for Young Women's Development. I didn't know that we were too small and a little too ghetto to get a meeting, so I flew out there. I took 7 flights. I'm not even gonna lie, on Southwest. It was really like 4. Stopped in all these cities, but I made it to New York, and I sat and I took the last one was like Detroit to New York. It was a red eye. I had some sandals on and really ashy feet, and I sat in that lobby for 9 hours until President Bareford came off that elevator, and I said, "You will meet with me." I was 22. Now I would never do that. I didn't, think about when you get older, you have less courage, right? You just have less courage. Do whatever it takes because you are owed that money, and it is our job to demand it, or it is our job to get a very clear answer. Number 2, I wish I would have done this better. I am 45, and I do believe, again, every challenge, I want to meet it. I've buried my husband, I've buried people, I'm raising babies. But I wish that my healers, our healers, could have more sanctuary for ourselves. Because the work is going to be there tomorrow, and honestly, if you believe in our Creator, there's only so much you can do. But if you are not there in the morning, you are not there in the morning. We have no space, we have no sanctuary, we have no story, we have broken lineage. There will be no 5-gun salute when we lose you. There won't be. If you are not an executive director and you started your own stuff, if you work for an organization or an institute, I guarantee you the job announcement will be out in 2 weeks. We need your healing. I am doing that work finally now, and my body is falling apart after years of being on the streets and in jails and in prisons, and now trying to fight and organize in philanthropy to give our people their just due. When we say take care of ourselves, it's really difficult to know how to do it if every single moment of our being has been, because of our anointing, has been to take care of those who cannot speak, who cannot lift their head, who cannot raise their hand. But we need you tomorrow and next week. Think about today those strategies that are just real. My grandmother had a prayer closet. And I didn't understand why, why are you praying in this little closet with this scripture? She came from a lineage of people who took space to understand their divinity. And she made space for it, right on Ralston and Randolph. In a little house, she made space for it. The last thing I think I've learned and that I want to share with you: shame the devil. If you work in system or if you're working in collaboration with systems, it is okay to chant down Babylon every single day. This is wrong. Yes, I need this resource. Yes, I need to collaborate with you. And I love you, even though I disagree with you. I am going to hold you as I need you to hold me, but this is not okay. Whether it be my dear friend, London Breed, who I love, we grew up in the projects together, we don't have to agree, I will still love you, but we know we can do better. Whether it be the person at the corner store who continues to sell dope out of the corner store, who has bodies on their belts, I will love you, but I will consistently, always be clear in what is good. And I love you. I will never give up on you. That young person who keeps getting arrested, who you know has done darker things than you can even articulate, I will shame that behavior, but I will love your spirit. Speak the truth. Always. In the nonprofit space, we are asked consistently to just think about vision. No, let's actually talk about what is real, what is happening, how our hearts hurt, but also understanding that that truth will lead us to other spaces of safety, of sanctuary. I need you all so deeply, personally, because this city is eating us alive. It's eating us alive. There is no Calvary coming to save us. There is no influx of people of African descent coming. It's just us. And when you think about wishing and praying for that Calvary, I hope today that you look at yourself and you say to your left and to your right and to the circles that it is us. The Calvary is not coming. How we shape liberation, how we shape good space, how we make good food that nourishes our bodies, how we tear down systems that don't work for us. Superman and Superwoman isn't coming. They're in this room. The folks who will create new policy, new procedure, new opportunity, new healing, I promise you, no one is going to implement the strategy, the love, roll out the red carpet for our babies that are being born right now, today, in this city, but you. It is unfair. It is unfair. But one thing that I've learned, if I cannot figure this thing here out, whatever that task may be, who gonna do it? I'm gonna take care of myself, I'm gonna shame the devil, I'm gonna say what's wrong and what's right, but I'm gonna get 5 sisters in the room and we gonna move this through. We don't even have to like each other, but we gonna love each other. The cavalry isn't coming. It's us. Thank you so much.
Latifah Simon. Get it. Oh, there was a lot there, and we're going to spend the rest of the day unpacking a lot of it. But it's just, I think this message that Latifah ended on, that we are the heroes, we are the sheroes we've been waiting for. And that is something that we cannot forget when we're doing this work. And at the same time, the good news is, aside from the new generation of leaders who are coming, who are stepping up, there's a new generation of philanthropists who genuinely, and I have the privilege to work with some of them doing that work in Ohio, they genuinely appreciate the value and the need for Black leadership, for local leadership. Not just groups who are parachuting in who think they have the answers, but who are community-based organizations. And so as we move forward, I'm really excited to bring up Kimberly Bryant. She is one of those leaders who started a community-based organization in Black Girls Code. She has built on that and her lifetime in technology and in social impact with Ascend Ventures. We're going to have a little fireside chat, so please join me in welcoming Kimberly Bryant.
Hey. Got two mics. How you doing, sister? Thank you for blessing us.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
All right. So I guess just, building off of what Latifah was just talking about, and this notion that, there is no cavalry, we need to be the leaders we're looking for. Your career has spanned a whole lot of different aspects of social change, but you've been at it for a while, and from everything I see, you've got years of leadership in front of you. One of the things Latifah touched on is sort of the need for wellness, the need to take care of yourself and realize that this is a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. How have you been able to do that for so many years, and what is it that keeps your fire lit?
That's a great question. I think for me, being back in this space, being back in this neighborhood is really a full circle moment. When I founded Black Girls Code back in 2000, we first started, even before we incorporated in 2011, we were literally right down the street, like right across the street. We started in the basement of 100% College Prep Club. That's where we started, yes. And so this neighborhood is at the core of our DNA, because when we were starting Black Girls Code, we literally were going door to door right here in Bayview, asking girls to come in this classroom and sit in this classroom and learn these technical skills with computer programming. And, when I think back 11 years ago, I think about this notion of how much we have to give as founders. And when you're creating something from the ground up, folks don't tell you that you're going to give away a little piece of your soul to do that. And that's real. And we do it, as Latifah said, because we care about our babies, and we realize if no one's going to save them, we're going to have to do that. That was my goal as a mother, was try and save my baby, but also try and save other babies, right? That moms didn't have those same opportunities as I had. And I didn't really pay a lot of attention to myself. So I think Latifah said that as well, but I think one of the things that has always kept me going and motivated is being really rooted and proximate to the work in the community and getting I would say my nourishment, if you will, from those other moms that were in the front row of these workshops, bringing their kids when we were right in Spelman, and the projects is right on the other side of that fence. And we're like, no, we want you on this side of the fence. And having that ability to give back and connect in community and be the face of the organization that demanded that we get the resources for our community is part of what kept me going and motivated for the past 11 years.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think because of the nature of everyone in the room, right? We're here because we want to make the world a better place, because there's a cause we care about, and sometimes we can pursue that at the expense of our own wellness, of our own well-being. And the thing for me that's been helpful is just, after working with enough leaders to help them realize that, you cannot do the work unless you take care of yourself. And so if you don't do it for you, do it for the cause, do it for the community.
Yeah, I think that's hard to do when you're a change agent and you're a grassroots organizer. You put yourself on the back burner, and I think we have to learn how to take care of ourselves first so that we can take care of the communities that we nourish. But I mean, I think that's something, a skill, that's a pattern we have to constantly encourage ourselves to do, because as Black people, that's what we've been doing. We've been taking care of our communities. And I personally grew up going around with my grandmother door to door to minister to the sick and shut in. I'm from the South, so I don't know if they call it that on the West Coast, but like we call it going to see the sick and shut in. And that's what we would do. Like I would go door to door with her, and she would pray with them, maybe bring them some food, etc. So it's in our nature to give in community. And I think figuring out how we can also rally around each other as a community and take care of each other is something we got to figure out how to do, and we have to learn that skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming together in community, that's part of why we're here today. So, we did a little informal poll in the beginning, and there's some folks who are at the beginning of their journeys. There are some organizations that have been around for some time, and I'd love to hear sort of what tactical, practical advice you have for them, and in particular for those the emerging leaders who are at the beginning of their nonprofit careers, who are thinking of starting organizations. Is there sort of one thing that you'd like to share with them, or one suggestion that you'd give yourself if you could go back in time a couple of years?
Yeah, I have really been on quite a journey over the last year, to say the least, and we may get into that somewhat. But for me, my nonprofit journey ended with having the organization that I created and poured my life savings in and nurtured for 11 years, taken away from me and told that I could not run the organization, and literally pushed out of it. So I probably won't tell any of you, I'm not a big proponent at this point of starting a nonprofit organization, because I'm like, the heck with that. But this is about nonprofits, but I'm gonna keep it real. I think that too often we as Black people and people from diasporic communities build these dreams and ideals, and then we get them to a certain level, and then they are taken away from us. I think it is absolutely critical, if you're sitting in this room and you are creating anything that is coming from your creative being, it is imperative that you protect that which you create. So that means reaching out to resources in the beginning to ensure that all of your legal documentation and paperwork is right, so your intellectual property, things that you create, they belong to you. They don't have to be belonging to the public good. You have to own something in this journey, if you will, because you are changing lives, but you are also creating legacy for your families. So I believe it is absolutely important, if you're going to start something that's a public company, that you carve out a little space to save and protect that which you own. Don't do it. I mean, and I think that's something we don't know in the beginning, because we're just doing work to do good. Just like Latifah said, we're working in a community. But forgetting to think about these things and putting protections as a founder are often how we see things throughout history stolen from us. So for me, I'm going to go straight to the chase, like get a really good lawyer and make sure when you set up your foundation or your organization, there are protections in place that will last the test of time from where your organization goes from beginning to wherever its end may be for you as a founder and CEO.
I want to dig deeper on that. First of all, let me just share a quick resource. If you're looking for a good lawyer and you're not in a position to be able to pay one, the San Francisco Bar Association has something called the Volunteer Legal Services Program, VLSP, and they can get you some pro bono representation. But Kimberly, you were talking about, kind of, especially with your own personal journey and some of the dysfunction that happened with the board, maybe going back and protecting some of your intellectual property, if you will, and that might have had some commercial and financial benefits to you, but on a deeply personal level, like this was another child of yours, right? And so I'd love to know from sort of like a board culture standpoint, because I think a lot of nonprofit leaders debate, do I want a group of loyalists who just do what I say? Do I want a group of people who are going to push me? Do I need to bring in the white folks who are running law firms and have access to capital? And so what are the lessons learned in terms of on the cultural and the organizational side, aside from those IP side of things?
Yeah, I think that, for me, when I started my organization, I was coming from corporate America, and although I had done work with nonprofit organizations and groups, even right here in Bayview Hunters Point, I had not run one. So when we were going through this process over the last 10 years where we were ready to scale, I had this misperception that to legitimize my organization, I had to go in and put folks on my board that had these lofty titles, that had these large jobs, and could give us name recognition based on their personal persona. And I think that was a mistake, because I had been in community and building with other community activists and people that I trusted to have my back no matter what. And I'm not saying that someone needs to be there and just do what you say, but I think as you're building, especially in the early, I want to say early is up to 10 years, it's imperative that you have a board that you trust to have your back through thick and thin. And if you go and put folks on your board that you don't know if they're going to have your back just because they have a title or they work at this organization or that organization, that could possibly backfire in the end. And I think we think and Latifah said it so brilliantly, like when we're building these organizations and we're going to ask for funding and we're going to ask for support, we're often told that we're not enough. And so we seek something or some people outside of ourselves, outside of our community to make us enough. I'm saying don't do that. Don't do it. Go and build with people that are right here with you in this room, in this community, that trust, that have the same values, that have the same alignment. So when the going gets rough, those people are there for you. And use these same resources, your legal counsel, et cetera, to build into your board structure, your governance laws, your bylaws, all of these protections, again, that both hold whoever is sitting on that bench supporting you accountable, but it can also protect the interests not just of yourself as founder, but of the communities that we serve. So all of that is important. The bylaws are important. They should be specific. There should be specific board agreements that hold board members accountable. And most importantly, build with those that you trust to have your back and hold you to the highest accountability as well.
That's great, thank you. And just one thing I quickly want to add to that is, for those of you that do decide for a variety of reasons that you want to bring in some allies onto the board who are maybe not African American or Black, as someone who works pretty deeply in gender justice and racial justice, I think it can be helpful to have some of that diversity. And one of the biggest things, as Kimberly's talking about, looking for that loyalty, looking at folks who can be in service, is genuinely looking for people who are not leading with their ego. They're leading with a desire to serve. They're leading with a desire to support, and they know their place. I'm very comfortable being out front, on stage, et cetera, but that's not my role when I'm working, in the gender justice or the racial justice community. And it's, and finding the people who know when to lean in and when to step back, I think is really critical.
Yeah, and I want to be specific here that what I am saying is not that you should only have black folk on your board. It's not that. Because everybody in this room that is black know that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So I'm keeping it real with y'all today. And so Darian might not know that. But the board that I am currently working with is mostly black folk. And so that's not what it is. It's not about that, because all skin folk ain't kinfolk. It's about building with people that have your best interest at heart, that have your back, that trust you, that trust you, and are there to help you shine. That's what it is. It doesn't have it ain't green, black, white, nothing. It's about making sure you can go deeper than that and align with people that are going to have you through the thick and the thin.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. No, it's so true. It's so true. And I think, you know, I get to work, I have the opportunity to work with a lot of folks who want to make the world a better place, and some of them are coming from a place of service, some are coming from a place of ego, and there's sort of the white savior complex that we run up against. And the bottom line is very few people see themselves as a victim. Right. And when we look at people and help them create the future in the world that they want to see for themselves, that's when we're in service, that's when great things become possible. And so, you know, all of that said, at my core, I am a fundraiser. Like, that is the work that I do in the world more than anything else. And so, and it's because I fundamentally believe that money is the ball bearings of social change, and no mission is possible without those resources. And you've been incredibly successful at raising millions of dollars from companies, foundations, people, et cetera, across multiple projects now. And there's a lot of people here that would love to raise more money for their causes, probably all of us, I would imagine. And so I'd love to hear from you. You know, the theme of the day is really tactical, practical tips and tools. And so I'd love to hear sort of on both sides of the coin, if there's one sort of best practice, one very tangible thing that you have found that has directly led to more income for the causes you work with. And on the flip side, is there a worse practice? Is there a pitfall of like, well, I tried that and it sure didn't work and it blew up in your face? Like, I'd love to hear on both sides if there's something really concrete you could share with the audience.
Yeah, I would say, you know, the thing that has, you know, served me the best throughout the past 11 years, you know, when I think in the beginning, like, we really had zero. We had less than zero. And I think I see Marlena in the audience over here. Marlena was my partner in crime in the early days of Black Girls Code, and was literally the person who brought us to the Bayview and said, let's come and build here because this is my community, because we worked together at Genentech. She walked from door to door asking people to come and help us. We got 100% College Prep Club because she went and used her personal connection. We started from nothing, but it was folks like Marlena who gave to help me create this vision, is how we were able to slowly but surely go from having zero in the bank to, when I left in 2021, we had about 40 million in the bank and we had 20 million in an endowment. Now, we did that because we stayed rooted in community and stayed true to self. When I started Black Girls Code, we would first go ask for money. People would ask us, well, this looks good and we like what you're doing, but can you call it something other than Black Girls Code? Because they didn't like that name, black, in front of it, but they liked what we were doing. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. So we gave up some checks because we were unapologetic about centering our work around Black girls and Black women and community. That's the first thing. You got to go in that room knowing who you are. You can't give it up. You can't change. You have to be able to tell your story from an authentic place. So when I tell my story, it's about telling my story that I started this organization as a single Black mom trying to raise a daughter in Frisco and not knowing really what was going to be the future for her, but seeing that if I could do for my one little girl, maybe I needed to do for the little girl in East Oakland or the Bayview too. So you got to tell that story because people connect with stories and seeing the humanness in your story. They don't necessarily follow missions, they follow people. And if you're embodying that vision, you got to have your story right. You got to have your why right. You got to live that and embody that. So anytime you open your mouth, someone opens their checkbook and writes you a check. I think last but not least, creating a network where you are giving as much as you are receiving. I think the essence of, how I've been able to be successful in building and scaling BGC is because I had a strong network. And I really was coming into that network also from a position of service, not always asking for something. So now when I need something, I can go, hey, can you make this introduction? Hey, I'm building this. Will you tell me how to put my books together? Or will you introduce me to a lawyer, accounting firm, et cetera? But first I had to learn to give. So that's important as you're building your network, even with everyone right here in this room. Everybody knows something. Everybody has access to some knowledge that you don't. Build those networks now so that when you need them, they're there for you. And then really be open to pushing yourself to do things that you may not think you know how to do right away. Like part of this journey as a nonprofit founder is learning as we go. You don't have to have all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed in the middle. You just need to know how you want to envision the future for your organization and your community and be willing to ask for help to figure out all the pieces around it. And I would say the thing to not do is please learn how to follow up. I think, did Latifah talk about that? I was like, I know I heard that, but like you gotta follow up. You gotta follow up because no today doesn't necessarily mean no tomorrow. As much as my very first grant came from the Google organization back in 2012, that was the very first check we got. We ended up opening our New York office in the Google headquarters. It's still there, but that was not until 2015, 2016. Got the first check in 2012. I would go to Google every year and ask, like, would you fill out these applications? We would try to get these grant and this funding. We wouldn't get it. But we didn't give up. We kept going back. We kept following up and saying, okay, what did you not like in this proposal? What can we do differently? Finally, in 2020, we got it. We cracked the nut after 10 years almost of going back and going back and going back, and we got a $2 million check from Google for part of this competition at the end of 2020. So you got to follow up. When you don't follow up, that's when we fail to miss that opportunity to keep your name in front of these people that are there to support you. So you've got to continue to go back and back and back.
That's great, and I can't underscore the importance of persistence and following up as it relates to fundraising. It's the thing that I think has been key to my success personally and all the different organizations I've worked with. And I do think that there's a lot of nonprofits out there that when they do get a no, they just take it and move on, and not affording yourself that learning opportunity to just follow up and say, what was it? What could we do differently next time? It is such critical intel, to be able to gather. So that's wonderful. I guess I'm curious, with the support of Google, with the support of these others, you took Black Girls Code to not only a national, but an international scale, expanding to South Africa, all across the US. And for the groups in the audience that do get to that point of success and development in their life cycle, is there anything you would share of like, don't forget this one thing as you start to grow beyond, that one neighborhood or that one location, and really almost start to look at a franchise model in some ways? Or is that model not accurate once you start to expand to other sites?
It can be, but I think one of the things that's important is that you have to be sure that this culture, this DNA that you build in your organization here in the Bayview is going to be the same as if you go to Atlanta. It's going to be the same if you're in Johannesburg. It's going to be the same if you're in Houston, et cetera. So making sure that you have part of your strategy being to really codify how you do your work. What are your core values as an organization so that the vision doesn't run away from you? And then I would say, lastly is, and this is a hard one, but I think it's important, is that you have to embrace the notion that we are creating these movements, these organizations, in a way they become things that we birth and we hold and we nurture as our children, but they're just a part of us. That's not you. That's not all of you. You were here to do a mission. You got to stay on that path, and that organization, this initiative, is one piece of it. We cannot be, and I had to learn it the hard way, so intertwined with that mission that if it loses, it doesn't work, whatever, you have to close your doors, that breaks you. Because this is not about breaking you in this work. It's about how do we make a difference for the communities that we're serving. So learn in the beginning how to be a little bit detached from this baby so that when it's time for the baby to leave the nest, they can go on and you can stay on your path. Because I believe that fully, that we are here to do work. We are not the work. We are who we are. And I think if you can figure out how to nurture that self-efficacy as a founder in the beginning, it will serve you in the end, no matter where your organization go, and then you can go give it away and start the next.
That's lovely. Thank you. So I think just in closing, I wanted to ask one last question, which is really about what's next for you. You've built up this incredible set of skills, a network, an unwavering sense of passion and commitment to the community. And so it's sort of, when I think about intention, sometimes I think about where do you be careful where you point that thing. And I know you've got a new project in mind, and would love to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about that with the audience before we wrap up.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Darian. I think that when I was just saying, we have to realize we're vessels of creation, we're vessels that the Creator put us on this planet for, and maybe other planets in the future, is we're do something. We're here to do a purpose. And for me, in this last 10 years, I recognize that it's not enough just to teach our kids and our girls and our young people to have these skill sets. We need to teach them to own their creations. It's about shifting the narrative to ownership, because that's how we create generational change and generational wealth for our communities that we lift. So for me, this next iteration is about teaching other founders how to build and to create. And I'm not creating a fund like Latifah, but I am creating a Black Innovation Lab, the first one to be in Oakland, California, where founders who are building and creating can come into this safe space. They can have resources to not only scale these ideas and get them out into the marketplace, but that we can build in community, because I'm tired of us having to go down the Sand Hill Road and into Silicon Valley. Why can't we build in our community? Why can't we build right there on Oakland 7th Street, which used to be the Black Wall Street, and back in the 60s and 50s? Why can't we start and do that again? So this very first Black Innovation Lab, I hope to build with a partner in Oakland, California, but seeing these Black Innovation Labs happen in other Black communities around the U.S. and abroad, so that we can create and own things within our community, which will change the narrative for future generations. That's it.
That's wonderful. Well, I think all of us wish you the best. It's great to see everything you've done so far in your career, and we can't wait to see what's next for you and all the people that will benefit as a result. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Good luck.
Kimberly Blakely, everyone.
11 o'clock meeting. Thank you.
All right. How y'all doing? Excellent. So we're going to do one more presentation before we have a lunch break, and also get you into conversations with one another. But maybe before we dive in, let's just stand up for one quick sec, do a little stretch. Been sitting down for an hour or two. Just kind of twist around, lean to the left, lean to the right. Shake it up a little bit. Gumbo band's not here anymore, but we could still move a little bit. All right, let's take our seats and we'll dive in. So, one of the things that Kimberly was just talking about is some of the struggles with her board at Black Girls Code. And unfortunately, that is really common for nonprofit leaders. It's something that I've experienced as an executive director. It's something that I've witnessed as a board chair and board member. And I've certainly seen it as a consultant and coach in many, many instances. It's part of the reason why I really specialize in that work very often. And as we look at this topic of what does it look like to truly unlock the board of your dreams, I want to share just a couple things. First of all, we're going to start out with some really brief context. I don't think we need to say a lot about why is it important to have a healthy relationship with your board, but I do just want to underscore a couple quick points for context. What we're really going to focus on, though, in this talk are those tactical, practical tips and tools. The here's how to, the do this, don't do that. And that is ultimately my life's work and the thing that I find nonprofit leaders always crave more of. Whenever I present, I also like to share some resources, some websites, some books, some places to go if you want to dive deeper and learn more about the topic. So we'll wrap up with that. And then we're going to head into lunch when we're going to do those executive roundtables, the solution salons, when we'll get into conversation with one another to introduce yourself, your work, and one specific challenge or need. So, going on almost 20 years ago, I actually read a report that was produced by Compass Point here at San Francisco, and also the Meyer Foundation, and it kind of blew my mind. This is when I was in my Craigslist Foundation days, putting on the Nonprofit Bootcamp for thousands of leaders at Cal, at UC Berkeley, and Bill Graham Civic, and I read this report that almost knocked me over because so much of the work we were doing with the boot camp was focused on getting new leaders into the space, emerging leaders like we just talked about with Kimberly. And that's great to fill the pipeline, but if the pipeline is leaking, then we have a problem, right? And what I found, at least what that report shared, was at the time, 50%, one half of executive directors were leaving not only their jobs, but the entire nonprofit sector within 5 years. And so that was the leaky pipeline that kind of, got me thinking. And as you dug into the report to find out why were they leaving, what was it that was driving them away from this work that is so necessary, number one at the top of the list, fundraising, all those responsibilities, that burden of having to raise all those dollars. Number two, frustrations and disappointments with their board, right? And ultimately, that's why the work that I do in the world now is largely focused on fundraising and boards. By the way, this report also found that getting an executive coach is the most cost-effective solution to these problems. Having someone that you could talk to, that's what got me into coaching with a focus on fundraising and boards, was this report. And so, we need to know that if you're struggling with fundraising, if you're struggling with boards, you are not alone. In fact, that is not the exception, it is the rule. And the good news is there are some really concrete and simple and easy to implement tools that will help you address these issues, and especially when you look at the combination of fundraising and boards. Anybody here struggling with getting your board to play a more active role in fundraising? Right? Well, that's not surprising, because 3/4 of executive directors say that they're disappointed in their board's contribution to fundraising, right? And so when you look at taking these two issues, fundraising, boards, and you put them together, that can be very vexing for many, many nonprofits and leaders, and that is a big part of the work that I've been doing as a result. Now, what does it look like for us to solve this, for us to move forward? And as you dig a little deeper into the dynamic that is sort of undermining board engagement, board development, board performance, what I find oftentimes is I think it's helpful to think in buckets. And there's basically, at a very big picture level, there's sort of three kinds of boards, and they tend to evolve with the life cycle of an organization. It is very common when you're starting an organization. I started Craigslist Foundation out of my bedroom, right? And many, many people here probably started, like Kimberly talked about, starting right down the block. Oftentimes when you first start a nonprofit, the IRS says you need 3 board members. You're usually one of them, and you ask some friends, some other folks to sign those other papers, but they're not really doing anything. They're just kind of signing things every once in a while. That's what I would call an in-name only board. Now, most of our organizations, bear in mind that over half of the 1.7 million nonprofits registered in this country have budgets underneath $100,000. So we're not all the United Way and the Red Cross. Most of the nonprofits in this country are small, grassroots organizations, community-led efforts with either no or very few paid staff, certainly full-timers. And so what do we need when we're in those early stages, when we're couple $100,000 budget? We need labor. We need people to do the work to execute the programs, and that's why we have a working board, which is essentially a group of high-powered volunteers that function as an extension of our staff. And that is amazing, and it is helpful, and it is critical to allow us to move forward. And yet, at a certain point, it becomes a problem, doesn't it? Right? At a certain point, once we get past a few $100,000, $500,000 budget, and now we actually are able to afford to pay people, at least double the minimum wage like Latifah was talking about, right? But we can afford to pay people. We can afford to have someone in program management, in fundraising, in operations, whatever it might be, an executive director, but our board is still stuck here, right? And what we really need from them is to be a strategic board, a generative board, a governing board that helps to set the big picture strategy for the organization and then marshal the resources needed to execute on that strategy. Fundraising, right? That, at a certain point becomes what we want from the board, and yet, to no fault of their own, they're used to being a working board. That's what they got brought in for. And so the transition from a working board to a strategic, to a governing, to a fundraising board can be very difficult. And the good news is, with a couple tools that I'm going to share, it doesn't have to be that hard. And instead of what you want to avoid at all costs is burning the bridge, is the bait and switch. Oh, well, we're essentially done with you. Thank you so much for getting us to this point. Our needs have changed, and now we're going to go look elsewhere for board leadership. No. You never want to do that. It might be the case that those board members need to transition off, but it should be a graceful transition that is founded on a premise of gratitude. Thank you so much for your hard work, for your leadership, for your passion, your unwavering commitment to this work. We never would have made it to this point without you. And now, thanks to all of that support, we are at an inflection point. We're in an exciting next chapter of our development where our needs are going to evolve. So let's have an open conversation about that as it relates to the board. What do we need, not in the past, but moving forward from the board? And once we articulate those needs, let's take stock and see, does our current board line up with that? And if not, what changes do we need to make? That process should feel good. It should feel exciting. I know when I did this work, when I was first an ED at Craigslist Foundation, I was able to transition off some of the dead weight that, kind of didn't really have a place on the board moving forward. And because I handled it in this graceful, respectful, and thankful way, he had a big smile on his face. He gave us a big check on his way out the door. And he basically felt like he was getting the gold watch treatment. And he was bought into the fact that he didn't belong on the board anymore. So it wasn't a conflict, and it doesn't have to be a conflict. Right? But the board has to be in the loop, and in fact, they need to lead the conversation about what's required of the board moving forward. And why is it so important that we look at these board issues from a fundraising standpoint? That's because one of the things that we professional fundraisers like to say is the most powerful form of ask is a peer ask, right? A peer ask. And that sounds something like, instead of me saying, hey, won't you give money to my organization? It's saying, I invite you to join me. I'm already doing this, and I'm asking you to do the same thing. I invite you to join me in supporting the great work of the Bayview Opera House. I already gave, and you should too. Who's with me, right? That's a very different ask than, won't you buy these pots and pans that I won't buy myself, right? You got to sample the goods, and this is why getting your board engaged in fundraising, assuming they're contributing, which is also something we're going to address, but getting them involved in fundraising is so powerful because they can say, out of all the causes out there, I'm on this board. I'm given to this group. Here's why, this is my connection, and here's why I want you to join me. People don't give to organizations, they give to people. So let's dive into some of the concrete tools, the tactics, the templates that are going to help you get there. First of all, let me share a couple sort of ideas that are all very tactical, that are all very easy to implement, and that all will directly lead to you raising more money for your organization. The first idea is this notion of a thankathon. So first of all, the biggest reason why board members sort of don't do fundraising or aren't comfortable with fundraising, aside from the fact that they sort of haven't been asked to do so at the onset, is because they oftentimes will say, I don't like asking people for money, right? And the point here is, it's almost like putting the pill in the cheese to get the dog to take its medicine. The idea is fundraising is not only about the ask. That's like saying dating is only about the proposal for marriage. It is a point of culmination, but there's a lot of work that goes into it and that comes after it, right? And so the idea is you want to help your board recognize that fundraising is a process and that it's not just about the ask. And if you don't want to ask, that's okay. We're not going to force you, but everybody has to play a role in fundraising because it is the ball bearings of our mission. And so one way to really help bring this home is print out a list of your existing donors, give each person 20 names and a short little call script, and maybe you get some pizza and you have everybody over to the office. Maybe they do it from home, but they just go down that list, they dial each person on their list, and they just say, hey, this is Darian from the Bayview Opera House. Just wanted to thank you for that $200 gift you gave us last year. Thanks to your support, we were able to expand our mentorship program, add a paid internship program, and serve over 5,000 local youth this year. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. Click, and then they hang up. There's no ask, there's no invitation, there's nothing other than saying thank you. And how do you think that donor feels? They feel seen, they feel appreciated. And when it comes time for their next gift at the end of the year or whenever, they're probably going to lean in a little bit harder. And when you call that board member up to say, hey, Darian, guess what? Remember John Doe who you called to say thank you? Well, he just went from a $200 donor to a $2,000 donor. Thank you. And all of a sudden I'm saying, oh, maybe I can fundraise after all. This stuff isn't so hard. And I'm really getting that there's a process going into the ask and following it. Staging a thankathon. Also bear in mind a little known factoid is that if a new donor gets a thank you call from a board member within 2 days, 48 hours of making that gift, their lifetime value to the nonprofit will go up by 50%. So just have a little rapid response squad that's like 3 or 4 board members, and anytime you get a gift over $500, $1,000, whatever the number is that's significant for you, send out an email. Hey, Bat Phone, can someone call this person and just say thank you today or tomorrow? I got this one. Great. Just want to say thanks for the gift. We saw it. We really appreciate the support. Looking forward to your partnership. That's it. And the point here is that all too often we think of fundraising as a transaction. And I wrote a whole book on fundraising, had 30 different experts contribute in every single chapter, whether it was online giving, foundation giving, individuals, corporate. Every single one of them had one thing in common that they said. Nobody wants to be treated like an ATM. They don't only want to hear from you when you're asking for money. In an ideal world, this might be impractical for most of us, But ideally, the golden rule is you want to map out 7 touch points between asks. Hey, here's your donor recognition letter, here's our newsletter, wanted to follow up to find out your birthday or how you heard of us, or thought you'd like an update on the impact that your gift made possible. Why don't you come down to the center, we'll give you a tour. Whatever it might be, but like not asking for money. That doesn't mean you can't have a donate link in your newsletter, but that's not the primary reason for reaching out. So in an ideal world, you are building the relationship, you are communicating with them when you're not asking for money. And from a fundraising standpoint, the most powerful thing I've heard said that is so true is that if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. This is really true, especially with those Silicon Valley types that Kimberly was talking about, those masters of the universe, CEOs, that if you ask them for their advice, and then they see you actually internalize that advice. You go to them before your concept, your new program or new organization is fully baked, ask for their input, and then come back to them a month or two later and say, I heard you, here's what we did about it, this is where we landed, what do you think? Oh, you like it? Cool. The funding is just going to flow naturally because it's their idea, right? And honestly, I will do my best to highlight their input and how we've internalized it, even if it was part of the plan already. Because the deeper the sense of ownership that person has, whether it's a board member or a donor, the more likely they are to give and to give at a significant level. So, unfortunately, as I shared, Theo is not going to be able to join us this afternoon, but I did want to talk briefly about messaging, because I think in today's attention economy, people have literally 10,000 messages or more a day that they're getting bombarded by. So given that, how does your cause, how does your organization cut through the clutter? And one of the most important things from a board fundraising standpoint to keep in mind is you need talking points. And more importantly, your board needs them. Because you might be doing this all day, every day, but they're volunteers and they're generally not. And so giving them a little 30 to 45 second elevator pitch about why your organization exists, the work that you're doing, that's the need for support that you have, and ideally giving them one of these for each of what I would call your fundables. That means your organization as a whole, each of your programs, and maybe you got 1 or 2 big ideas that you don't really talk about in public, but if someone wrote a big enough check, the entire board agrees this would be amazing and directly in line with our mission, great, come up with a 30 to 45 second pitch for it. And as you're doing this, as you're going through this exercise of coming up with your 3, 4, 5 elevator pitches, keep in mind the most important thing, the single biggest mistake that I see about 95% of nonprofits make when you go up to them at a cocktail party and say, oh, interesting, St. Jude's, what do you guys do? Oh, we run a homeless shelter, we provide food, clothing, and vocational training for unsheltered people. Okay, great. I know what you do, but that's actually not what matters. It's not about the what, it's about the so what. It's not just about the work you do, it's about why it matters, why I should care. Oh, St. Jude's, what do you guys do? Well, most people don't know that about 1 in 9 citizens in San Francisco are living on the streets, mostly women and children. And so we focus on working with some of the most vulnerable members of our population. We provide for their basic needs with food and with clothing, but we also help themselves break cycles of poverty through our vocational training program. Great, night and day. It took about 5 to 10 more seconds, but now you're essentially giving me the context of why I should care, right? And so put in a visual way, if you think of your message as a pyramid, I was just in Egypt doing a clean water project, and as you're looking at a pyramid, what most of us do at that cocktail party when someone asks what we do is we start out with all the details, and we work our way up, and we leave it to the listener to reconcile, why should I care? What's the big deal? What I want to encourage you to do is come from the top down. Start with a sentence or two that speaks to what is the problem you are here to solve, Why should I care? And at a very high level, what are you doing about it? So it's the problem, it's the solution, each of which are no more than a sentence. It's 1/2 to 1 sentence each, because ultimately the problem is depressing and it's usually something people are familiar with, so you don't need to say a lot about it. And ultimately the solution, your long-term vision, is a little Pollyannish, and if you spend too much time talking about the brotherhood and sisterhood of man generations from now, like, you're going to undermine your credibility. What have you done for me lately? But with 1 to 2 sentences of context, now you've set the stage for what you would usually say when someone asks what you do, which is your 2 to 3 sentence, "This is what we do" statement. And it can be helpful to understand what kinds of support, cash, in-kind, volunteers, board members, that you need for each of those fundables. Another Kay Sprinkle Gracism that I love is she said, people don't give to you because you have needs, they give to you because you meet needs, right? And I see nonprofits make this mistake with fundraising all the time. You are not raising money so you can hire a program manager. You are raising money so that you could serve 5,000 more low-income youth next year through your proven program. How are you going to do that? Oh, we're going to hire a program manager, but that's not what I'm giving to. I'm giving to those youth. Get out of your own way, and remember, you're not raising money for yourself or even your organization. It's for those youth. All right, let's get into those tools, those sort of very concrete tools that I mentioned earlier. I have templates for each of these. I also talk about each of these in the books that you were all given. But let me talk you through sort of the value of each of these tools. And I will tell you that these are rocket fuel for your cause, especially as it relates to engaging your board more deeply. And it includes transitioning off the dead weight. It includes leveling up the people that have untapped potential. It includes providing a framework for a much more proactive and strategic approach to recruiting new members who come in understanding their role in fundraising, and for making sure your meetings aren't a waste of time. Because frankly, I've led and been to many, many board meetings, and most of them are useless. And there's one reason why. And it's because it is typically the staff or a speaker talking at the board just to bring them up to speed, right? And if you look at a typical nonprofit board meeting agenda, almost every item has the word report or update on it. Not helpful. By the end of that meeting, you have not moved your mission forward, you've just brought people up to speed. Not a good use of the group's time. And with one of these tools, you're going to get all of those FYIs, all of those updates out of the way in the first 10 minutes of the meeting, so we can spend our time in brainstorming, in dialogue, in discussion, problem solving. Hey, we need more funding for this program. Here's a list. What do you think? Any innovative ideas about how to bring some more money in, or about board recruitment, or about, we have a decision to make left or right. That's the juice. And remember, when you want money, ask for advice. When these board members start to contribute and move the mission forward, what do you think is going to happen when it comes to their fundraising, personal contributions, and involvement? Right? So, very briefly, I'm really going to focus on 3 tools in the rest of the presentation here. The first one, which is typically the first step from a standpoint of transforming your board and unlocking the board of your dreams, is typically called a board member agreement. It's basically a job description that by design is uniform for all board members. And once it's finalized and approved, every board member would sign this agreement alongside the chair, saying, here are the minimum requirements, the expectations of being on this board, and I agree to those. It creates a really helpful basis of accountability, and it is a foundation for the overarching change we're looking to facilitate here, which is we want to create a board as we enter this exciting next chapter of our development. We want to create a board where everybody is crystal clear exactly what's expected of them. They understand how the pieces fit together. We take a proactive and intentional approach to recruitment, and we make really good use of our times in meetings, right? That's the goal. How do we get there? It starts with a job description. Everybody is clear, and it's a contract that everyone signs. This is what's expected, not just of me, but of each and every board member. Latifa or the mayor joins our board, even she would be expected to do these things. Board matrix, that is the recruitment tool. That is a tool for, instead of just saying we need board members, being able to get to a point where you could say, hey, we really need a Latina accountant with good corporate connections. Do you know anyone? And if everyone on your board and your staff is saying the same thing, the likelihood of you finding that person is going to go up exponentially. The consent agenda is that tool to transform your board meetings so all of the updates get out of the way in the first 10 minutes, 5 minutes even. So those will be the three that I'll focus on, but let me briefly say that there's two other tools that I find to be really helpful, if not transformative, that can be implemented further down the road. One is an annual survey. Once we have this job description, once everyone has signed the board member agreement, it is only a helpful forum of accountability if we look back at it. So once a year, people fill out a quick online survey. Hey, are you doing your job relative to that agreement? How do you think the organization is performing? How's the board performing? We're looking for feedback. If 80% of people feel like we're meeting too often, now we've got room for dialogue. Let's talk about that. What should we do instead? But we're also asking people, what are your goals for the year ahead, and what kind of support do you need from the board and the staff to achieve those? That's the annual survey and personal development plan. And then finally, creating job descriptions for your board executives, your chair, your treasurer, your secretary, whatever it might be, as well as charters for each of your committees. And just like the other tools, these are a very simple tool, very easy to implement, but very powerful and transformative. And I'm talking about a one-page job description or charter. I'm talking about something that says, in a sentence, maybe two, my job as treasurer is, boom, and then just a few bullet points of, tactically speaking, here are my roles and responsibilities. If it's a committee, maybe it's, here's how often we meet, here's our reporting structure, we have members and non-members, these are our responsibilities and areas of focus, right? And just articulating that and making sure anytime those board executive or committee chair positions turn over, the new person has an opportunity to refresh that document and make it his or her own so that they have a sense of accountability and that everybody on the board knows exactly what that committee or what that executive is doing. Really, really helpful. So let's dive into these three tools before we head into lunch. So first of all, as I shared, the framing of these tools is critical. And this is especially true if you don't have a consultant lined up. If you are trying to implement these tools yourself, let me just start by saying, don't do that. I've tried it many different ways and it never works. You can implement them yourself. It has to be a board-led process. And so if you don't have the luxury of being able to work with a consultant, some kind of trusted third party that comes in and says, I've worked with other organizations, I know these best practices, that's okay. It's quite common for grassroots groups. But then your job is to essentially convince your board chair or some board champion of the value of these tools, right? And then they will be the spokesperson to convince the rest of the board to head in this direction. And instead of focusing on what's in it for the organization, focus on what's in it for the board, right? Thanks to you and your leadership, we're at this exciting next stage, never mind the work of the staff. As we move forward, we're going to be raising more and more money, expanding our impact, and it seems like we may want to revisit what is the highest and best purpose of the board. We want to make sure we make the absolute best use of your time. Low touch, high value is the mantra. We want to make sure we make really good use of meetings, that we're really strategic about who we bring on the board, and that everybody knows what's expected of them and how the pieces fit together. Generally, when you frame it like that, board members will always say, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. And then they become the messenger for the rest of the board. If the staff tries to push these tools on the board, it will be perceived as kind of a bait and switch, and it will be very challenging. So, just bear in mind this need to sort of focus on what's in it for them and the promotion of this culture of accountability and transparency. And also make it clear that nothing is going to be forced on them. This is going to be board-led implementation, so they will decide what's in that board member agreement. The reality is there's a process there that means you will get to drive a lot of that, but they will have a sense of control that makes them comfortable. So with that context laid, let's dive into the three tools. The first one is the board member agreement. Like I said, this is the contract. This is the job description that says we collectively, as the directors, we all agree that each and every member of the board is expected to do the following every single year. That doesn't mean that, the police are going to show up if you don't do it. That doesn't mean you're going to get terminated immediately. It'll be a conversation. It's basically a checklist. And at the end of the year, if we look back and you say, oh, I only made it to 8 meetings instead of 9 meetings this year because I was sick or I changed jobs, cool, life happens. But if you only made it to 2, that might be more serious, especially if because of that new promotion, you're going to be in the same situation next year. It's going to create a much more graceful opportunity for a conversation around, well, it looks like your situation has evolved, and as we've discussed, here's what we need from the board, and so maybe it makes sense to transition you into a different role. This is not a lengthy document. It's no more than 3 pages, oftentimes 2. It's not a legalese document. Usually most nonprofits have somewhere buried in their 500 pages of bylaws, they have some legalese written, very abstract things about the role of the chair, the role of directors, et cetera. No, we're talking about a simple down and dirty management tool. So keep it really, really concise, 2 to 3 pages max, and let's just list out in very plain language what is the bare minimum must-have contributions in this low-touch, high-value board. And let's make sure that it's really clear and objective. It's black and white. We're not going to say, I will make a good faith effort to attend all board meetings because I made it to 2 and I thought that's pretty good, but you think I'm dead weight. You don't want that. You want to say, I will attend 75% of all board meetings, and then there can be no debate. We can have a discussion around why you didn't make it, and that's fine, but there should be no discussion around did I or didn't I. Everyone needs to be on the same page. So that's sort of the premise here, what it looks like. And again, I can share this template with anyone who's interested. I'll put my email and my mobile phone up at the end of the presentation. The other thing that I'm happy to offer is if anybody wants to just jump on a quick phone call, I can offer up like 15 to 20 minutes as just like a pro bono consultation if you have questions about these tools, about fundraising, about board stuff in general. This is my life's work, is helping people help, and so I'm happy to make myself available at no cost. And again, I'll have my email and mobile phone up there at the end. So what you'll see in the template, if I send it to you, is very brief introduction. They already know the mission, so we don't need to go on about it. So it's basically a paragraph saying, we are a group dedicated to this mission. In order to do that, we really lean on our board in a big way. And this document serves to articulate the needs of the board. Number 1, term length. Bear in mind, as you're creating this document, it doesn't have to line up with your bylaws. You might decide to change the terms or add in term limits, and once this document gets approved, you update your bylaws. But, is it a 2-year term? Is it a 3-year term? Am I capped at 3 terms, or is it unlimited? Do we want a probationary or a trial period? Kimberly was just talking about the idea of how intimate and how important it is to make really good decisions when you add someone to your board. If you're a more mature organization, if your board is highly performing and functional, and everybody's getting along and you're worried about rocking the boat, one simple tactic is when you invite people to join the board, basically date before you get married. So have them come to 1 or 2 meetings as a non-voting member, and only after that can they be voted onto the board. What does that do? It gives you a chance to see them in action. Are they leading from a place of service and support? Are they leading with ego? Do they follow through on their commitments? Are their comments disruptive or productive? Right? It becomes pretty obvious once you see them in a board meeting. I'm going to attend meetings. Pick a number, 75% of all monthly, quarterly meetings, whatever it might be. Maybe if you have committee structures, I'm going to be on a committee and show up to those calls and meetings. I'm going to stay connected to the mission. That could be volunteering once a year, going to one of our events once a year, doing a site visit, whatever it is. Don't let board service be an academic, only in your head intellectual exercise. Get them on the front lines and make sure they get to see and meet the clients that you serve. Another great way to do this, by the way, is called a mission moment. Have one of your clients come to a board meeting and just share their story and the impact your organization has made on them in 2 or 3 minutes. Really powerful way to ground the work of the board in the work of the organization. How much time are we talking about here? Everyone's saying we're going to contribute at least 2, 3, 5 hours, 10 hours a month, whatever the number is. It can oftentimes be helpful to level set. Everybody here is providing, counting all the meetings, all the community engagement. We're all in for at least X amount of hours. Hopefully some people will do more, but that can be helpful. Now this is the money slide. This is where we talk about fundraising in the agreement. You will note that very strategically, it's not in the beginning or the end of the document. It is in the middle, just like when we put the cheese in the, put the bill in the cheese, right? And that is because you don't want board members to feel like the only reason there is to fundraise and to contribute, and yet they must recognize it is a core responsibility. Now, a couple things I want to say about this. This is oftentimes the thing that executive directors and staffers are looking for, is getting their board more engaged in fundraising. And again, we don't want to just lead with this. We want to include it in a document that talks about the highest and best purpose of the board, but we've got it in the middle. And another thing I want to say is, I think it is a horrible idea, especially if you are working in diverse communities like this one, to have a give or get target. And let me say why, right? First of all, do any of you have one of those? Okay, we've got a couple groups here. So that typically sounds like everyone in the board commits to either giving or donating at least whatever the number is, $1,000 a year, $10,000 a year, right? And conceptually, it makes sense that like we want everyone in the board to contribute. And yet, there's a couple problems with that model. Number one, you absolutely have to split or bifurcate give and get, right? Because even if I raise a bunch of money, even if my company gives or my community gives, that cannot absolve me from making a personal donation every year. It is absolutely mission critical that you maintain what is called 100% board participation in fundraising. As your group gets bigger, as you start going after larger grants, you will start to get asked by funders what percentage of your board gives, and if you ever answer less than 100%, they're not going to give you the money. That cannot happen, right? They want to see that the entire board is supporting it. That doesn't mean that they have to give $1 million or $1,000. They can give $10, especially if you have a diverse board, if you have some lived poverty experience on the board, if that's the community you're serving. Bring them into the boardroom. Let them be part of the leadership. But they don't have thousands of dollars to give, and they might not have the network to raise it either, and that's okay. Everybody plays a different role, but these get targets can undermine diversity in that way, and they can also let the rich folks off too easy. You have a partner of a local law firm on the board, there's a $1,000 minimum, you know, she can write that check really easily. In fact, she probably could have added a 0 or 2. But because the minimum's 1,000, she gives 5 and feels great about it, right? When she has much higher capacity. So on the give side, the language I like to use and find to be best practice is that everyone accepts the requirement that we all give an annual personal capacity gift, as defined by the largest gift that you can comfortably make. Maybe this year you lost your job, you're in a rough spot, $5, $1, whatever it is, everybody gives every year to the best of their ability. And it should be one of your top, pick a number, 3 philanthropic investments of the year. Maybe your board is really well connected and on lots of other boards, so maybe it's top 5, but it should be one of their top donations of the year. If they're giving more money to 10 other groups, maybe they should join those boards, right? So we're saying everyone gives to the best of their ability every year, but we don't set a number. From a get standpoint, Once again, if we set a target that might undermine some of our goals around diversity, what I like to do here is just say everybody's going to open up their Rolodex and pick a number, 3 introductions a year to potential supporters. That includes not only donors, foundations, corporate funders, but it could be in-kind partners. It could be potential board members who will be donors, right? And then the idea is, with all the free time we have in our meetings, we're going to have more time to talk about what kind of intros would be most helpful. So you've got the give, you've got the get, separate and without concrete numbers or expectations, quotas there. And then I like to have, even though most of this document is super clear in black and white, I find it helpful to just say everyone understands fundraising is a core part of our responsibility as board members, and also to say, if I'm not comfortable making an ask, I will not be forced to do so, because just by telling people that, it gives them a little bit of relief, and it lets them feel more comfortable about the document in general. So this is the sort of funding side of it. The rest of this is pretty self-explanatory, but it's, once a year I'll take that annual survey, share my thoughts, share my goals for the year ahead. Hey, I am not going to meddle. I'm not going to try to run the organization. I'm going to help to set the strategy, marshal the resources, hire and fire the executive director, and set their compensation. But managing the organization is the function of staff, and I understand that. Avoid conflicts of interest and maintain confidentiality, and then just sort of the fundamental definition of what it means to be a board member, that I'm fiscally responsible, that I accept the bylaws, I'll be an ambassador of the cause, and that I'll be accessible. I'm not going to make you wait a month after you email me to get back to you. And ultimately, the last thing is that if I know that I can't do these things and I won't be able to do them on an ongoing basis, you're not going to have to hound me. I will proactively come to you and look at transitioning into a different role. And then, boom, once this document is approved by the board, everybody signs and dates it alongside the chair. And now you have, on the bottom line, accountability and a forum that you can look back at once a year to say, did you do each of these things? If not, let's talk about it. Do you need some more support from our end? Should we transition you to a different role? Was it a one-off problem? Whatever the case may be, but it gives you a basis, an objective basis to evaluate performance and to set those expectations. Really, really critical. On the board matrix side, so this is the tool that allows you to get to consensus amongst your board and your key stakeholders. At all points in time, everyone involved should be clear, what are our top 3 needs from a board expansion standpoint right now? What are we recruiting for? You're in the room with Shaman, with Latifa. If you get 20 seconds with them and you're saying, hey, do you know a board member we should recruit? Maybe they say something, maybe they don't. But if you say, do you know that African-American lawyer with good donor connections? The likelihood of them sharing a contact and it being the person you're looking for goes up exponentially, right? It's the power of attraction. How do you get there? You start with, what are the characteristics? And again, simple tool, you don't want to go nuts. This is not a nice-to-have list. This is the critical must-have list of 10 years from now, if we are successful at achieving our mission beyond our wildest dreams. It would be impossible for us to do that if we don't have at least someone on the board who is blank. And everything on this list fills in the blank, right? We cannot fulfill our potential without these different things. So this is the must-have list. I find it helpful to organize them into 3 buckets or categories. Expertise and capacity, what do we have, what do we know? Capacity is typically time and money at the bottom of the list. The broader part of the list is around the expertise. We want legal, accounting, we are an arts and culture organization, whatever it might be, whatever's important, nonprofit fundraising and governance, but also subject matter expertise. Connections, pretty self-explanatory, different kinds of money, donors, foundations, corporate, government, but it could be connections to the press, connections to partner organizations, whatever it might be. And then finally, diversity, not just in a traditional sense around racial and ethnic diversity, to me, as it relates to this exercise in the board matrix, it's really about representing the community you serve, right? If you're running a reentry program, maybe it makes sense to have someone not just as an advisor, but on the board who has been through that system, right? If you're a domestic violence shelter, we want to make sure we have women's voices and DV survivors represented on the board. We're working with unsheltered folks. Great, let's make room for someone with lived poverty experience. And so, yes, it does include some of the ethnic and racial components. It can include gender balance, men and women. It can include age. We're serving youth or seniors. Let's make room for them on our board. Geography. We want folks from the Bayview Hunters Point community or from SF or from New York where we do a lot of fundraising, et cetera. And so the point is, these are just illustrative examples over here, but the idea is you facilitate a conversation with your board around not just what would we like to have, but what do we absolutely need to fulfill our potential as it relates to these three buckets. Once you go through that exercise, it becomes very easy for people to just put a 1 under their column in the relevant cells, and now you have an inventory map of where we're light and where we're heavy, and that makes it really easy to have a conversation to say, okay, based on this, everybody gets 3 votes. What do you think our top things are? And we land on, we're really looking for Bay Area residents who are high net worth and also have connections to major donors, or whatever it might be, right? Really, really helpful exercise. And then the key point is, anytime someone enters or leaves the board, you redo the exercise. So now we're one step further, and now we're revisiting, and now what we really need is someone with construction experience, because we're about to launch our new building and build a new structure, whatever it might be, right? Really, really helpful to be crystal clear and proactive from a recruitment standpoint. So the final tool that I wanted to share today, and again, I've got templates for all these if you'd like, is the consent agenda. And this is sort of the secret Jedi mind trick that as an executive director, as a board chair and director, and as a consultant, I have consistently seen have a transformative impact on nonprofit organizations. And this is the tool that allows you to get all of the things that normally take up 90 to 100% of your meeting agenda that have the word report or update in them. It allows you to get them out of the way in the first 5 to 10 minutes of your board meeting without leaving a bunch of information on the editing room floor. How do you do that? I don't know. Anybody see The Matrix and you remember how he learns Kung Fu in like 10 seconds? That's what we're talking about, is your Bayview Opera House Kung Fu for your board in the first 10 minutes of the board meeting. So what does this look like tactically speaking? It's actually a 3-part tool, and practically speaking, you would send this out as one integrated PDF along with the board agenda and any other pre-reads about a week in advance. That's best practice, that's ideal, not always practical. But the point is, that sandwich, that 3-part PDF, has 3 components. The first component is an organizational dashboard, a heads-up display, just like when you get into your car, and within 5 seconds you could see, oh, I have no gas, or I'm about to overheat, right? That's what you want your board to be able to look at and immediately see if something's blinking red, right? The meat of the sandwich, which is normally what would have taken up your whole agenda, is anything with the word report or update. Instead of you spending hours to create a PowerPoint, talking at the board, they ask 1 or 2 clarifying questions, usually around why did we spend $5 too much on postage or something that is not at all helpful. But instead of doing that, you're going to save yourself a huge amount of time, but you're also going to give this to the board much more efficiently, almost like a dossier for a head of state, which is any update you want to give the board, put it in writing, and there's really only 2 rules here. Each update has to be no more than 2 paragraphs. So we have a fundraising update, a financial update, a Program 1 update, Program 2 update, facilities update, capital campaign update, legal update, HR, board expansion, whatever. Anything that could have been on the agenda that you really just wanted to bring them up to speed on, put it in writing, keep it to no more than 2 paragraphs each. And the only other rule is if anything is blinking red on the dashboard, you got to spell it out here and tell people, hey, this is a big deal or it's really not a problem. we're over on expenses because we got that big unexpected grant, and therefore we're spending more money. We're good, right? So that is the main, like the meat of the sandwich. And then finally is the minutes. And I'm not talking about the typical minutes that are 10 pages long, he said, she said, how everybody voted and what time we adjourned. This is like 2 to 3 pages. You could keep the more detailed version for archival purposes if you want, but from a management tool standpoint, what's really helpful is keep them short, no more than 3 pages, and only focus on the key takeaways, the insights, and we're gonna highlight and format 2 things to literally jump off the page. Number 1 is any votes that were taken, but the other thing is any commitments made. Amanda offered to call that plumber by next week, and Darian offered to call 3 people to potentially sponsor the event by the end of the month. And the entire finance committee agreed to review the financials and send out an updated version by next Tuesday. Whatever it is, everybody and every group that makes a commitment gets their own highlighter color. So I can just look down the list and see anything in red or green pertains to me. Oh, I forgot to do that one piece of homework. Let me take care of that before the next meeting. Really, really helpful as a basis for accountability. So what does this look like on the dashboard side? Don't go crazy. Again, less is more. Usually it's around about a dozen key performance indicators, metrics that collectively demonstrate not only the operational and financial health of the organization, but also your programmatic impact. We are mission-led organizations. And so if your job is to bring people into theater, then how many seats have you filled this year relative to our goals? That's really important, right? And for each of these metrics, we're going to have a range: what is green, what is yellow, what is red. So we know, should we be celebrating, should we be worried? And the most important thing is, not only are we going to have annual targets for each of these metrics, we know that our goal for the year is 1.2 million in income, in revenue for the organization. Great. We're at 12% of that right now. Is that good or bad? I don't know. But if I tell you we're at 102% of our goal for this point in time of where we're supposed to be right now, I know that we're on track. Much more helpful. And so the point is, aside from that 1.2 for the year number, we need month-by-month targets so you can report against those year-to-date targets at each and every board meeting. Really, really helpful. What does this look like? I know you can't see it, but I'm going to zoom in. You've just got a bunch of different sections: financials, board, fundraising. You've got annual targets, the month-by-month target of where we're supposed to be now, where we actually are, maybe where we were at the last meeting, and then how we define green versus yellow versus red. To get in a little bit more specific, so like one example is on the financial side. Usually you want to be tracking how are we doing with total income, with total expenses. Maybe we want to look at accounts receivable. Maybe we want to look at reserves, our rainy day account. If we stop collecting a single penny tomorrow, how long can we keep the lights on for? Hopefully 6 months, but maybe less, right? On the fundraising side, we might want to look at unrestricted funds. We might want to look at grant funds or corporate funds or government funds or program-specific funds, individual donors, whatever's important to us, whether it's because it's a big piece of the pie or it's a small piece, but it's a strategic growth priority. On the programmatic impact side, that looks like lots of different things to lots of different people. Maybe it's how many students you've enrolled or how many people you've actually placed into living wage jobs. Whatever your mission is, that North Star, quantify it and track your progress and impact against it. You might want to track some board metrics around looking at board giving or how many board fundraising intros. Remember, that was in the board member agreement we mentioned. Anything like that where we're saying, hey, everyone on the board is going to give, well, let's track what percentage is giving. Everyone's going to make intros. Have we been making our headway against those numbers? You may even want some staff metrics around HR, et cetera. And so just a couple examples there. And so with all of that said, I want to wrap up as we head into lunch and as we head into the roundtables. But I want to end with a brief story because I think, to counterbalance the fact that today is all about those like Kimberly's talk was Tales from the Trenches. We want to get nitty-gritty. We want to get tactical and practical with these tips and tools. But I also want to make sure that we don't do that at the expense of dreaming, at the expense of picking up our head from the blinders to see what's in front of us and to map out what success looks like. Because if we don't do that, sometimes we can cut off really huge, if not transformative opportunities for our organizations, but more importantly for the communities we serve. And there's a story that I once heard about an executive director who ran a hospital in a low-income neighborhood. And one day she was reading the Chronicle of Philanthropy, kind of a, industry rag, talks about who got funded, hired, fired, whatever it might be. So she's reading through the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and she comes upon this article that says that the other major hospital in this community just got a $6 million gift. And her eyes kind of go a little bit wider. And she keeps reading. And then she almost falls out of her chair when she continues to read. The person who gave that gift, one of her board members. So she sees this $6 million gift coming from one of her board members who's never given even close to that amount to their hospital. And so she has to kind of collect herself. She takes the dog for a little walk around the block and calms down, calls up the board member and gets lunch in a couple days, and they sit down, chit-chatting how the wife and kids, whatever, catching up on some other stuff. But eventually she gets to the part of the conversation where she says, so Jane, I saw that gift that you gave to St. Luke's. That's really incredible. Congratulations. And then she asks the question she's really there to ask, which is, but I gotta ask, why didn't we get that gift? And the board member said something so insightful and so interesting. She said, well, nobody ever brought me a $6 million idea. Nobody ever brought me a $6 million idea. And so as we remember back to that pyramid slide and talking about elevator pitches for all of our fundables, yes, we need to have a tight explanation of our core work in each of our existing programs, but let's not forget every once in a while to lift up our head and say, what would it really take to achieve the goal? And maybe it's not feasible right now, but having that vision in the back pocket, being able to articulate at a high level what is the big goal, and really inviting people to share that vision when appropriate is powerful. And so as much as we focus on being in the trenches, on doing this day-to-day work, we need to remember to dream. We need to remember to dream. Thank you. So really briefly, just a couple resources I promised I would offer up. BoardSource has a great website, lots of really good governance resources there. BoardNet USA does some board matching if you're looking for candidates. Governance Matters is another lesser-known resource, but a lot of really solid tips for grassroots organizations. Volunteer Match has placed millions of volunteers with nonprofits over the last 10, 20 years. They also place board members, as does Idealist. Idealist also has a whole suite of other tools for nonprofits. The Board Match started here in San Francisco by the Volunteer and Nonprofit Center, and they run basically like a job fair for mostly corporate folks who want to join nonprofit boards. So it's almost like a science fair where you set up a little booth and just meet a bunch of folks that are interested in getting involved and supporting good causes. And then I mentioned Blue Avocado earlier, free online magazine made possible by the Nonprofit Insurance Alliance that oftentimes will have content on really solid tips for good governance and fundraising. So I did want to share, as I promised, my email and my mobile phone. If anyone wants to reach out, like I said, I'm happy to make time for a free call, kick the tires, talk through any of these tips and tools, share those templates if you want to follow up with me to get those. Or if you want to talk about something different, whether it's in fundraising boards, nonprofit finance, you name it, I'm at your disposal, and that's the work that I do in the world. So very happy to help. So I did want to sort of very quickly provide a couple key points as we head into lunch now. As I mentioned, during the lunch break, we've got about an hour for folks to grab lunch, but also for you to get to know one another. And that is because I fundamentally believe that we have entered a world where everyone is smarter than anyone. Everyone is smarter than anyone. What does that mean? Well, I've been doing board work, fundraising work for many years, but as much as I know, as much as Latifah might know, you collectively know more, especially when it comes to the work being done locally right here. And so let's tap the wisdom of the masses. Let's get into dialogue and into community. Like we said, the rope is stronger than the thread. And how are we going to do that? We're going to use a really simple model that I created called Solution Salons. So after you get your lunch, just circle up. You can circle your chairs together. I would say probably about 7 or 8 people do a circle at the most. But you're going to go around the circle. If it's a debate over who should go first, whose ever birthday is earliest in the year gets to go first to settle that one. But when it is your turn, you're going to answer 2 questions. What are you up to, and how can we help? What are you up to, and how can we help? Let me say just a little bit about these 2 questions. The first question, what are you up to? This is your personal and organizational elevator pitch. This is who are you and what is the work you're doing in the world. But the key thing is, I said elevator pitch. So this is no more than about 45 to 60 seconds. And we're not going to have a facilitator in each circle. We're all going to self-facilitate. So this is just a tip for you all. If anybody takes more than a minute to introduce themselves, the respectful and graceful way to encourage them to move forward is to say, that's so interesting. How can we help? If you hear that, it means it's time to wrap up your intro and move into how can we help. So really quick personal and organizational intro, because the reason we want to keep that brief is we want to leave as much time as possible for the second question, which is really where we get the juice out of this exercise, which is how can we help? And the way I want you to think about this is you get to rub the magic genie lamp one time. So what is the one greatest challenge or obstacle that is standing in the way of your work? Being as clear and as concrete as possible. Not, I'm looking to grow my organization, but hey, I'm struggling getting my donors from last year to come on board and support us again this year. Or I really could use a good accountant or PR firm. Or whatever it might be, get really granular and specific, because that's going to increase the likelihood that people say, oh, I got someone you can call, right? So you get to ask one challenge, one request of the group, and after that, there might be some very minor clarifying questions, but after that, it's a barn-raising exercise. It's popcorn where anybody who has any ideas, any resources, any contacts, just pop up, chime in, share that contact, share that resource. It's totally okay to reach across the circle and hand someone your card or show them your phone with the website or whatever it might be. And after that conversation naturally sort of runs its course, and you're all done with the popcorn and everyone shared the resources that they have to share, then we move on to the next person. And they get to answer these 2 questions. Any clarifying questions, any resources. Once we're exhausted there, we go to the next person. Does that feel clear and make sense to everyone? What are you up to and how can we help? So we're going to break for lunch right now. What time is it, Kev?
It's 12:02. It's right about, yeah, it's right on time.
12:05. Okay.
Just got
So
some-
we're going to get started again in here at 1:15. So please try to be settled back here by then. And lunch is right out here, right, Kev?
Yeah, they just pulled
All
up.
right. So we've got lunch out here. Come back, circle up, and remember these 2 questions, and then we'll get started in about an hour.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your
Thank
lunch.
you. Lunch is, yeah, lunch is out here, man. Lunch ready?
So Shamir is here for her first lesson, and she came in with, she's done some research, and she's always wanted to fly. So I'll let you go tell your story.
I started off traveling the world on the water as a merchant seaman, and I had like a crazy experience with that, and now my goal is to become a pilot. I've been having it like in my dreams every day to become a pilot since I decided to retire to sea. So right now I'm in my learning process, my first stages of learning of how to fly. And this is the school that I chose to go to because I heard that they have an excellent flight program and an excellent teacher.
Yeah, man. I didn't know. Okay. Oh, man. Huh. That's cool. I know. Yeah, I knew about that just on Facebook. Yeah, I knew on the news. Yeah, logistical question. When you fill it out, did you set registration on it, or did people? Okay, cool. Yeah, because anytime you do a tour, in my experience, they have half the people don't show up. So it is good. We got some good people here, so but the right people, that's the most important.
These are good. I mean, everybody's kind of somewhat educated. You know what I mean? In terms of what their approach is to out here. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by sending the others to Jessica? Cool. Question mark. All right, should we get into it?
Yeah.
Can you let the guy know he should change the video? I don't see anybody. Oh. So yeah, you want to be Donahue and run around. I'm gonna like basically ask for people to interact so you can hand them the mic.
1, 2, 1, 2.
All right. All right, everybody, we're gonna head into the home stretch. If you could please take your seats. All right. How y'all doing? Excellent. Can I ask everybody a question? How many of you are inspired so far? All right, how about inspired to action? Pick up some tips, some tools. All right, that's why we're here. So, I was talking to Kevin over the break, and as I mentioned, unfortunately, Theo had a COVID exposure and isn't able to join us. But we decided instead to repurpose the time that we have left today, the next half hour or so, to get into community, to get into conversation. That's part of why we're here. And so I know over the break, I invited you to sit with these two questions. I know a lot of people were busy talking to each other, getting to know each other, but I wanted to create some space and opportunity and a platform for us to really introduce ourselves to each other, because the work that's happening in this room represents some of the most important work being done in this community. And when we partner with other groups, that's when the rope becomes stronger than the thread, right? That's when great things become possible. And so I'd love for who's ever interested to give you an opportunity. Kevin's got the mic and he'll run around. But I'd love to invite you to speak to these two questions, to introduce yourself, your organization, very briefly to the group, and to share one specific challenge or obstacle that you're facing in your work right now. And then we're going to all get into it together and see if we can help each other build stronger organizations. Can I get a brave soul to volunteer to step up first? Otherwise, I will pick people. All right, we got a couple brave ladies up front.
All right. The sister right here. Tell us your name and organization.
First, giving honor to God. My name is Bridget Renee LeBlanc, and I'm the Vice Chairwoman of the San Francisco African American Chamber of Commerce. I'm up to making sure that African Americans are treated fairly, and we're able to continue to change and put more into our communities. How can you help me? I will personally take my time, and I want to mentor 10 African American young people between the ages of 18 and 30. Just 10, I can only handle 10. And hopefully, my other counterparts and other friends that I know outside of the city and county of San Francisco who's interested in mentoring can help me. But I want 10 that I'm gonna dedicate to, and I will make them honorary members of the San Francisco African American Chamber of Commerce. But last but not least, I wanna change the fact that entrepreneurship started in the Black community. And so we work hard to send our kids to college, but we need to work hard to make sure if we're gonna send them to college, you give that much energy and you make sure they have their own business while they're in college.
Excellent.
So helping you would be
Identifying some mentors. Raise your hand if you know a young
Identifying
Black.
10 young people between the ages of 18 and 30 that I can work with personally, 10 young people between the ages of 18 and 30 who I can work with personally to help them become entrepreneurs, and I will give them a year membership for the San Francisco African American Chamber of Commerce.
Let's give a hand up for the sister. Now, how can people contact you yes?
Sorry. Okay, so the email address is the word together, then period, we, period, thrive, THRIVE, 2021 @gmail.com. So it's together, period, we, period, thrive, 2021 @gmail.com. And I just want to say, this is phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank
I totally
you so much for
appreciate you
being
guys.
here. So before you all follow up later, can I just get a show of hands if you know a young, enterprising Black youth who could benefit from that mentorship? All right, I definitely encourage you to go and talk to her, and remember that email address, Together We Thrive.
Action.
All right, I know I saw another hand up over here in the green
sister,
sweater.
sorry about that. How you doing? Why don't you tell us your name?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Nancy Gitoito. I come from Kenya, but I've been living in San Francisco for quite a while. I run a nonprofit called Limau Cancer Connection. Limau means lemons in Kiswahili. I started it after I lost my mother to breast cancer in Kenya. The stigma she faced, the healthcare disparities, and all that. So we started off by making knitted prosthetics to donate to women who have lost breast because of breast cancer, because most of them were wearing socks, rags, toilet papers, and losing their self-esteem and dying so early. So 5 years later, I ran the biggest breast cancer organization in Kenya out of my mother's story. So now that I'm permanently here, I'm starting a movement to fight breast cancer in Black communities here in San Francisco. My goal is to have a resource center that Black women and men who also get breast cancer can come and connect with other people and families and get free mammograms, free resources, free funding. You know, if you have, you're going through treatment, we connect you with resources that help to pay your rent and all that. Which we have the resources, we just need to connect people to them. And I realize there's also a lot of healthcare disparities in terms of research. The medicine that has been used for breast cancer has been tested on white people. So black people are dying because we are not part of the research and there's no money for that. So we need to advocate, and that is the help that I need, getting a space, funding, good board, good strong board of directors, because I'm passionate about it. I've done so many media interviews in Africa, but I want to start a strong movement here and a little thrift store to help us fund our programs.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy.
So
Let me ask, quick show of hands. We talked earlier about the importance of seeking first to collaborate and only then to lead. And I'm wondering how many of you in this room are working in promoting public health within the Black community and the Bayview Hunters Point community. So Nancy, just look around the room because I want you to talk to these people. And actually, before we go on to the next person, I'd love to have Kevin talk a little bit about the groundbreaking work he's been doing with Umoja Health and really lifting up the Black community around access to COVID vaccines and testing and beyond, but a community-driven effort. Kevin, can you share a little bit about that?
yeah, I will. Thank you for bringing that up, because Umoja Health is the way forward. It's the future. It's a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is proven with the work we've been doing since the pandemic. Umoja Health is a method that's founded, it's an organization founded by Dr. Kim Rose. She's amazing. She's a specialist in cancer. She leads the UCSF Cancer Research Institute. She's my partner in crime. And Dr. Kim Rose, when the pandemic hit, she pivoted because of the overwhelming shift in what happened in society. And she wanted to make sure that Black communities and communities of color didn't fall with the traditional way of health disparities. It's persistent. It's been going on. So she's used this opportunity when everything fell down to push forward Umoja Health. Umoja means community. And what she did is she reached out to me through a mutual friend and said, Epps, this is what I want to do with our resources and the resources that we're going to get. I want you to help me push Umoja forward. But they had already been doing the work in the system, because she's been fighting the system she's amazing. She's renowned. Stanford, Harvard, she's prolific. And like any other situation, they looked over her when she was at Stanford, so she moved on. But she's such an amazing person. When she launched Umoja Health, she let me hire people from our community. I'm like, if y'all serious about wanting to reach this community and other communities, let me hire some brothers and sisters, because I know who to go get. You know what I mean? So I went and got some troopers. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we did. And today, Umoja Health we're nationwide now. It's a model. We're having our second anniversary. If y'all seen that little looping flyer, we're having our second anniversary in Oakland, October the 1st. And 80% of our resources go to people that look like us. And that's the paradigm shift. We're making sure the resources that we get, and she's been fierce, fighting and getting us a lot of resources, we're making sure we hire people that look like us, period. Because I'm a part of that, so I know who to go get. So 80, 90% of our workforce and young people that we got in pathways to college that she started, we making sure they look like us and they come from these communities. And that's the paradigm shift, giving us the resources and let the people like us that know what the issues are go and take care of our end, because if we leave it up to them, it's not going to happen. Look at the history. So that's Umoja Health, umojahealth.org. It's an amazing organization. I'm so excited about it, and that's the shift, and that's the work that they're doing. And Dr. Kim Rose, I salute her in the just amazing leadership that she's exhibited to us in a way that really just amplified and elevated what's possible out there for us if given the opportunities and putting ourselves in these positions to take care of the people. It's us for us, and that's why I say nobody's coming to save us, and that's why it struck a chord when Latifah, she reaffirmed, you know what I mean? That's like my sister too, and that's why how this came about too, is these are all my folks. These are all my friends, and I know, and we interact because we all from the same community. It's like, damn, we got some power brokers. We got a few other people too that we're gonna bring, like, that's from these communities, like the Larry Jacksons, man. These is young dudes from here that's sitting on, whoo, I'm talking about billions. But they just need somebody like a big brother say, man, we need you to come here and connect with the people, because if we connect like this, it's gonna move people, because this is real. You know what I'm saying? And that's all I want to do, and just continue to convene. That's kind of like when I'm convening. Like, I know these great folks, great minds, and I want to bring everybody together like that.
That's great.
And so thank you so much. But
Thank you,
Emoji
Kevin.
Health for sure, Darian. Love you for bringing that up.
I would actually say that Emoji Health, in my mind, because I spent some time with Kevin and Dr. Kim on this, I think it actually represents a paradigm shift in two ways, because Kevin talked about the fact that these resources are being directed to the communities of color that need them most. But the other paradigm shift that organization represents, in my mind, is it's not just black serving, but black-led organizations, for us, by us, of the community, by the community, and for the community. And the fact that this was a grassroots effort that came up that is now taking hold on a national scale, because y'all heard during COVID that the rates of COVID in communities of color were significantly higher. So a lot of folks were trying to solve for that, but it was, frankly, a lot of white folks trying to parachute in and pretending like they know what they were doing and knowing what the community needed. And all of a sudden, when you had a local grassroots community-led effort, guess what? It was more efficient, it was more effective. And I really want to salute Kevin, who's spearheading their community outreach for raising awareness of this really critical effort. Thank you, Kevin.
Appreciate that, brother. That's deep.
All right, we got another person in the back. I'll come back for you.
You got it, D?
Oh, go for it.
Oh, man, the knees still. It'd be cool.
Gotta move around.
Shit.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. You were so good up there. My name is Norma Farris Taylor, and I am the president of Bay Area Black Nurse Association. An association has been in the trenches since the 60s. We have been promoting good health forever. We do health screenings. And as a matter of fact, we are working with Umoja right now in terms of the pop-up clinics and making sure that those persons who are hesitant about taking any of the vaccines, to encourage them to do so. Okay, what am I up to? We are up to coming out of this pandemic a whole lot stronger than before. We are determined to make this a change, that things are not going to be the way they were, period. The genie is out of the bottle. It's for too long, we have been at the wrong end of the spectrum in terms of health and access to health care. So we are determined that we're going to be making a loud noise and affecting policies to make sure that we do not, we get what we deserve in order to be stronger. I want to go from nonprofit to profit. I'm going to profit. We're going to profit with good health. You know, we're not going to take it anymore. You know, so, you know, I've been out here. I know the Bayview Hunters Point. I worked with Dr. Coleman years ago. We worked up on the hill. I've done a lot of work in this community. I saw Kevin's movie that he showed of the days gone by. I'm so happy things have changed, Kevin, because those were some hard days. But I just want to thank you for this opportunity. I think, yes, it's important to have an elevator speech.
You got it.
Thank you.
Ma'am, before you hand the mic over,
How can you help?
yeah, is there something we can do for you?
you know what you can do? Each and every one of you is take care of yourselves. Be healthy. And when I'm talking about, I'm not only talking about physical health, because I think we know the things that are out there that really impact our health. The water, how many people didn't work out there in terms of the electricity and all the hazards that this community has. So we know about that. But it's the emotional and psychological issues that really could get to us in our communities. Right now, there are a lot of people who are really still ailing from this pandemic. There's a lot of anxiety. There are a lot of mental health issues that really need to be addressed. So what I say to you is take care of yourself, take care of your families. You are worth it. Just like I'm worth it, take care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
Right here. Okay. My name is Ariane Harrison. I am the Executive Director of Marie Harrison Community Foundation, Inc. for Social and Environmental Justice. There cannot be one without the other, especially when it comes to communities of color, and that's coming to a hood near you. These neighborhoods are the places where they usually are over-industrialized, where there's toxic chemical waste, and it is excuse my choice of words, but it's a damn shame for us to go through this struggle for decades, trying to solve these equations. Sometimes we can't keep on chasing the light. We have to become the light. And I'm saying that to say that right now what I'm doing is I have an academic scholarship that's available to students. Higher education is important. That's $5,000 apiece. And with that becomes bridges of opportunity to go into the California Department California Department of Environment, U.S. EPA, California EPA, Bay Area Air District. These jobs are available to our kids. Okay, a part of the struggle. I was born in 1967, which is the year of the struggle. Okay, and my parents were activists. They were part of the social struggle. My father worked with ex-offenders. He was a Black Panther. My mother, she wrote articles, and she fought to her last day for this community, selfishly. And I'm willing to do the same because the fight is not over. When I look at my people, I see my uncles, my aunties, and not yet, right? For there goes me. How can I help that person? I have a nickname in the community, and I've always had that. That's the resource queen, right? Because it is true. You can bet your bottom dollar that I know a little bit. I run into the damnedest people in my walk, you know, and I'm not asking just what I can do for this community, but what can we do for the community? There is no I in we. This is for us. The Marie Harrison Community Foundation is a foundation to build upon the rock. My doors are always open. The conversation is always fluid. I like organic conversations, and I like solution-based conversations. Because, you know, sometimes we got to roll up and we got to put our fists to the sky, but we also have to start pushing our people into these places that have done us wrong. We need our soldiers on the inside and the outside. Right now, I'm also working to raise funds for people to be tested for toxic exposure. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I also practice what I preach. So doing that, I would not ask you, sister, to do something I wouldn't do myself. So I had my first round of tests in January, come to find out that I had a lot of elevated levels of stuff that wasn't natural for the human body, but I'm still here. I took my second round of tests. The first 10 tests came in, and guess what? 8 out of those 10 tests, people were positive for uranium and for plutonium and radioactive isotopes, right here from this community. So we have to put our souls together. Everybody that's doing health out here, we need to sit down at the same table. We need to come to Jesus moment, and we need to fight like hell for the safety and the health of our children. And I refuse to leave another legacy toxic and chemical waste. Clean air, water, and land is not too much to ask for. I'm asking for you guys to join me on this fight. Our kids are worth it. It might be too late for me, but it's not too late for those kids. Will you join me?
We got you, already know.
All
Yes.
right.
Sister, right? Thanks, Jerry. Oh, you too, sister? Here. How you doing, sister? Here, right here. Here, come on.
Hi, my name is Nina Smallwood. I recently started a nonprofit called In Love We Trust. In Love We Trust with the planet, humanity, and the people. Basically, it's a sustainable nonprofit geared to educate people and dispel myths on thrift. So when Nancy talked about starting a thrift store to help fund the cancer research, it spoke dear to me because my professional career was in oncology. And through that, I worked myself up from the front desk to eventually opening an infusion center in Brooklyn. And the disparities among healthcare are real. So we'd love to get a part of that. But one of the things that I'm mainly focused on to fund that whole goal is I've created a sustainable beanie line, which is taking thrifted fashions and lining the inside of hats with the goal to be 90% sustainable within 5 years, meaning that I would use sweaters and things like that, but really connecting why people of color should care. The footprint that fast fashion like H&M and Zara's and Forever 21's, we don't understand the environmental impact that it's causing, how much water here in California, water is a crisis, how much water it actually takes to grow cotton, how much waste we export to places like Ghana, billions and billions of pounds of clothing that we consume. So starting to increase the circularity of clothes. 50 years ago, people used to wear a pair of pants about 30 times. Now the average American wears a piece of clothing about 3 times. So I'm here to show you thrifting can be fashionable. Every item I have on is thrifted except for probably the shoes. The bag was a hand-me-down. So really just getting that message out there. What can you do to help me? I literally just launched it on Sunday, so I don't have a website. Brigitte is gonna help me or give me a website. So really social media, I struggle. I'm 43, almost 44, so while I'm on the digital divide, I still struggle with social media and a website. So if anyone has anyone who is into social media management, and a lawyer for intellectual property, because I missed that, because I want mine. Yeah, that's where you can help. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Well, let's go to the next person. A couple people mentioned getting black youth into college and scholarships is part of what they're focused on. I also just want to mention that a lot of the research shows that once black youth get to college, not enough of them graduate. And it's because a lot of times they don't have the role models, they don't have the people, they're first generation college students. And there's a group called the Posse Foundation that basically creates a network at different universities for black students, by black students, for them to support one another. And their graduation rates, their job placement rates are significantly higher. So if you're mentoring some black youth, I really encourage you to point them in that direction. PosseFoundation.org. Go ahead, Kev.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, what are you up to? I'm up to developing a school for a preschool, Afrocentric preschool for and with a strong parental component.
Can you speak up a little?
Pardon me?
Hold the mic a little closer.
Oh, you can't hear me? Oh. Okay, so I'm a retired teacher. I taught English as a second language like for 48 years. I taught everybody but my own people. I taught Chinese people, I taught Latino people, I taught everybody but my own people. So I retired and then I started subbing. I went to a school with all the Google people, their children, and some of those kids can fix a Rubik's cube in 30 seconds. Some of them 10-year-old kids have books on Amazon, have videos. This is what I want to do for my people. I'm 71, my time is limited. How can you help me? You can help me get to school in this community. You can help me open up this place for the kids so the kids can come in there and you can see our black genius. You know, you can see that. And it would have a strong parental component. You know, we're talking about these people that don't know, they need early childhood education. You need to start it now. All these kids, they come in there, they eat healthy foods. They're rushing to get their water. They come in there with their vegetables and things, you know. But you know what they don't have? They ain't got no soul. You know, they don't have no soul. They don't have the compassion. You know, they don't have what we have, you know. And our children are brilliant, and we can't you're not going to get to the parents unless you get to the kids. The kids need to be taught about healthy food. They need to be taught who they are. They need to let their genius come out. And I want a STEM program. I want an environment where the kids can run around and do things. They can get on the computer. There was a kid there, 10-year-old kid. He was mad at someone else. He got on the computer and talking about, I hate him, I'll kill him, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I said, you can't do that, you know? I've tried to tell the teacher's like, oh, I don't have time to talk right now. You know, that kid's gonna end up bumming up the place. You know, we need to get our kids and pull them in and do it, and that's what I want, and I want you to help me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We got one up here. Okay, we got him back there.
Sure.
One here, and then we'll wrap up with the gentleman up front.
My name is William Hammonds. Amongst other things, outside of producing media, and we're live streaming this event. It's a great event. Glad to see everybody here. We started a program called blackflightschool.com. And what we're trying to do is give away scholarships to black students that want to become pilots. So you can go on our website and follow the links, and maybe you might submit an application. You might want to send some money in because we're trying to raise money. We don't want them to pay for anything. It costs about $20,000. We want to do 10 students this year. So it's about 20, so that's $200,000 we want to raise in a short period of time. There's the information up there on the board as well. And we're less than 2% of individuals that have pilot's license that are in the flight industry, black folks. And some of you may have seen just recently, there's the anniversary for the woman, name escapes me right now, but Bessie Coleman. Just had an anniversary, I think it's 100 years or so, but there was an all-black flight team, the pilot, even the people that handled the luggage and everything. Everybody was black. I think it was American Airlines, and they just made a historic flight in honor of Bessie Coleman, who did fly out of Oakland, in fact. So we should understand that. And so we're asking for money in particular so that we can pay for students to learn how to fly and become pilots. And I didn't say kids, I said students. So one of you in here might want to become that. It's not an age thing. You got to be 17 to get your license. We'll take them below that and above. And so the information's there, and I welcome any assistance you can offer, and anyone else, pass it on, tell everybody. We want to get them flying. In case we got to leave the country, we know how to get out of here.
Right here. Real quick, I run a nonprofit called Brothers for Change. I've been doing it for about 20 years or so, but what I haven't seen is really a real black center that can handle $20, $50 million that can take and give it back to us. We have the YMCAs, we got these big corporations. We don't have one black nonprofit center that can handle $100, $200 million that can get down to us. But we all can join together and create that. We have a problem with collaboration. And I can tell you, because I've been around for a long time, we have a problem with collaboration. I don't know how many emails, how many things I tried to start. We have a problem with collaboration. I still can't breathe. The Dream Keepers might have started something, but I still can't breathe. I still can't breathe. We ain't said George Floyd's name, not one of these Dream Keepers events that went on. I still can't breathe, and we still need to come together.
Thank you. All right, we have time for just a couple more, and then we're going to wrap up.
I'm going to step back just so I can take my mask off. My name is Keishama Johnson. I am the Outreach Hub Coordinator for Wu Yi Children's Services. And if y'all know about Wu Yi, y'all know mostly Asian. However, just on, because we in here, they have expanded to make sure that they have resources for Black and brown children. So they have opened right there on 3rd and Paloux, a community hub space that is for children 0 through 5. I am a master teacher in the state of California. I have created a play space completely free. Come in, 6 to 8 children. You can have a private play date and also activities that are geared toward age appropriate for our children. Okay? And the help that I need y'all to let people know that it's there. Because what I don't want to see is that we've done all these things and nobody comes. And so I have flyers, I have my card. Let the community know it's for us, okay?
Thank you, sister.
Thank you so much.
We're going to blow that up right there, though. Give me your information. I know what to do.
Hi, my name is Philip Howes. Graduated from City College of San Francisco. Work teach at Cole Tenderloin. I would like to inform anyone who's interested in studying computers, coding. All the courses are free. Honorable Mayor Dale Seymour is the founder. And what could you help me with? Anyone who's interested in coding, learning computers, if you inform them that Code Tenderloin, 55 Taylor, have free coding courses, free computer courses.
Wonderful, thank you.
I definitely know that organization. Man,
All right, we got time for just 2 more.
Okay, we're going to squeeze this in, man. We got our folks here, man.
All right. My name is Marie Sturgill, and I'm the Economic Empowerment Chair for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women San Francisco chapter. And so our goal is to educate women that look like us and children the value of financial literacy. And so we just did here at the Bayview Opera House on Saturday, August 13th, being that it was Black Business Month, we hosted a Elevate Her Small Business Expo. Bridget LeBlanc, who's the chairwoman, she was able to be there. We had a lot of Office of Workforce Development. So it's up to us to be able to, we are the cavalry that's going to change our community. So that's why I do what I do, to make sure that I'm making a difference. And so what is my ask is that everybody here, that I'm going to give you some information. We need to collaborate more, because if we're getting the message out, we're the change that we want to see. So I can educate people about wealth, building their wealth, educating them, changing their mindset. It starts at home. It starts with us. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you.
One more, D.
We got one last one, and then we're going to wrap.
Hello. Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
I don't want to be too loud. My name is Daryl Bailey. I'm the West Coast Regional Organizer for Journey for Justice. It's a 501c3 based out of Chicago, but like I said, I'm the West Coast Regional Organizer, so I'm based in the Bay Area. We started in education, but through education, we saw the need and demand for all areas and quality of life, especially with the pandemic. A lot of Black, brown, and indigenous students were suffering. They didn't have clothes, they didn't have books, they don't have socks, little stuff like young ladies going to school and on their monthly. That she's 12, she doesn't know. So, we have to be able to help that. September 22nd through the 24th, we're going to Washington, D.C. It's the Equity or Else Quality of Life Advocacy Day and Festival. We will be demanding that the politicians get on board with the quality of life agenda. And we will have a festival with issue tents and a concert with national artists to cap it off. But how you can help me is by getting in contact with me, giving me a needs assessment, let me know what it would take for your organization to participate. And even if you can't participate in this particular event, there's life going afterwards. So we need to plan for the future. So get at me. I'm right here. And let me know what you have going on so I could possibly help with what you guys have going on. Thank you for giving me your time.
I appreciate that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
All right. So I do want to be respectful of people's schedules, and we are going to end on time. So unfortunately, we don't have time for more comments, but I do want to encourage anybody who's interested to get in touch with me directly. I'm at your disposal. As I shared, I'm happy to set up a free consultation and just give you some ideas, some tips, some tools, and point you in the right direction. But before we wrap up, I want to share one final story, because we just did some work helping one another and sharing our work. And it reminds me of a story about an executive director of a nonprofit right in this community. And this one day, the nonprofit executive director was walking down the street, and she fell into a pit. She fell into a pit, and she's down there at the bottom. It's kind of dark, can't really see much. She's looking up, help, help! I'm an executive director and I fell into a pit. But nobody's there to listen to her, to help her up. And so she's yelling for a while, and finally, after a while, a cop walks by. And we got our issues with cops, but she's in a pit and she needs some help. So she said, help, help! I'm a nonprofit executive director, I need some help, get me out of this pit. Cop just keeps walking. So she's frustrated, despondent, but after a while, she picks herself up, starts yelling again, and she sees a fireman walk by. And she says, help, help! I'm an executive director and I fell in this pit, get me out of here. Fireman just walks by. And finally, after a while, she sees this old guy walk by. And she almost doesn't even say anything, because if the cop and the fireman walk by, what's this old guy going to do? But, she decides, help, help! I'm an executive director and I fell down this pit. And lo and behold, the old guy kind of looks over the edge of the pit, and next thing you know, he jumps right into it. And she says, what are you doing? A cop and a fireman just walked by and didn't even stop or help me in any way. You're an old guy, you jumped down in the pit with me. Why would you do that? And he said, well, actually, I used to be an executive director here in the Bayview myself. And years back, I fell in the same exact pit. And another executive director showed me that there's actually a little stairway back here through the dark to get out of the pit. And sure enough, they found the stairway and they got back up to the ground, back up to the land. And she said, oh my God, thank you so much for getting me out of that pit. What can I do to thank you? And he said, you don't need to do anything to thank me, but executive directors get stuck in this pit all the time. And the only thing you can do is pay it forward. And the next time you see one of your peers, one of your colleagues, one of your brothers, one of your sisters in a pit, you help them out. You tell them what you learned, because we're all in this together. And the rope is stronger than the thread. And the work we are here to do is too important for us to rely only on ourselves, only on our organizations. We need to be in community when we do this work. That's why we're here today. And just on a closing note, I want to thank the community ringleader over here, Mr. Kevin Epps, San Francisco Bayview Foundation, for bringing us all together, for his lifetime of leadership, and for making today possible. Thank you, Kevin. All right, everybody, that's the program for today. If you didn't already get a book, please grab one on your way out. There's actually two of them, the management and the fundraising book. Feel free to grab them both if you think it'd be helpful for you or someone else. I'll be around if anyone wants to talk. You've got my info as well. And thank you, not only on behalf of Kevin, on behalf of myself, on behalf of our venue, but thank you on behalf of the thousands and millions of people you collectively serve.
Hey, team,
Hey, y'all, can we come up here and get one picture? This is like, y'all down? That way? Oh, they want it right here for the Opera House? Okay, let's get one for the Opera House, man. Let's get a photo for the Opera House. They're going to post it up. That'd be great. Right over here, y'all. No, right here. We're going to all stand down here. Right down here. Right here. Please. Right here, y'all. We're going to get a picture for the Opera House. It's legendary right here. Come on, D. Come on, step in here. Oh, we're going to get the... Well, they're going to probably, they put it on, how they be doing the little photo. Oh, yeah, there. Hey, Will. Yes, sir.
Anybody got a camera?
Hey, Will. It's up there. They're shooting off of that digital thing. All right, cool. Yeah, you can sit down. Have a seat. Yeah. Nicole, where you at? We up? Oh, they going high tech, man. The Opera House is back. Ooh, it's back, man. Look. Come on, yo. This is home.
What up, y'all?
Hey, Will, let me know when you're ready. Huh? Yes. Smiley, where you at? Ashley. I don't know where she's at. Come on over here. Will, we rolling from up there? Okay. So what did we just say? Cheese? Because we don't.
I think we got to say we are the cavalry. All right. Ready?
All right, Will, let me go. Oh, shoot, we already got that. We got the camera up there, too.
Okay, we are the cavalry on 3. 1, 2, 3.
We are the cavalry. All right, so it's a wrap. We'll be doing this again. Join us October 1st, Festival, Umoja Health Festival at the Lake, October 1st, umojahealth.org. Thank you. How was this? We pulled it off. Yeah.
You're rep from the Black Nurses Association.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you just jumped up off of there like.
Yeah.
So I mentor a young woman in high school. I was gonna ask you today about connecting me with those people, but we're good. I was saying like these situations, just when I started talking, I was like, oh. So I'm gonna connect her with Lupe, and hopefully I just let Lupe know about the date for the Umoja thing at Lake Merritt. I already told AJ that I'll be there to help to be volunteering and stuff. And I'm hoping Lupe can join too, so she can see.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
And she can even maybe get a job with you guys.
Yeah, possibly. But Norma is amazing.
Yeah, she's a senior in high school, so she's like thinking about college now.
Yeah, that would be good. A good resource, good support.
And if they have scholarships and stuff, that would be helpful too.
Very good support group.
Make this.
That's okay.
I'm so bummed. I thought you were gonna help me with this weekend. Oh.
And I got a premiere, but you seen that third bathroom?
Yeah.
That's gonna be big too. Yeah.
People like you and the other one that help us.
Thank you so
And
much.
God bless you. God keep you. Okay.
Thank you, sister.
All right, we did it.
We did it, G. Let's take care of it. We locked in, man. So we we good. We locked in.